This is Tae-sung, the absolute menace who wrecks enemies without breaking a sweat, all thanks to his broken debuff skills. One tap and even high-rank monsters are sent straight to sleep. His level 999 master demands perfection through one ironclad rule. Two strikes are for amateurs. True legends ended in one. Tae-sung mastered the art of the ultimate one-shot kill. As a hidden class debuff master, he cripples stats, shatters armor, and completely freezes the enemy's reflexes in an instant. He nullifies every resistance, scaling the damage output until his targets simply crumble under the sheer weight of his power. It doesn't matter who steps up once those debuffs stack, even the strongest gods fall with just one single poke. Legendary raid bosses learned the hard way that crossing him meant an instant game over. But before he became this beast, he was just a hardcore grinder leading the server's top guild after years of blood, sweat, and endless monster hunting. He wielded a $75,000 staff, the game's ultimate flex, until the Great War against the Genesis Guild erupted. Snake-like allies stabbed him in the back, looting his legendary staff and handing it over to his sworn enemies. Stripped of his gear and abandoned by his crew, he's forced to run. Trembling behind a tree, reality finally sinks in. As his empire turns to ash, Tae-sung hits rock bottom, sobbing in despair. Then the snakes return to finish the job. Flaunting the stolen staff, the traitors coldly dismiss their betrayal as just business, before aiming the weapon right at him. A massive lethal inferno erupts from the staff, yet the expected impact never comes. Fate had other plans that day. Out of thin air, a mysterious elder manifests, erasing the blast with a shockwave and vaporizing the traitors in seconds. Shaken Tae-sung triggers his perception rune, only to see the impossible. This stranger is level 999. His brain short-circuits, level cap broken. But the real shocker, this god-tier powerhouse is actually just an NPC. The elder reveals he's been observing Tae-sung's grit for ages. Suddenly, a golden system prompt flickers into existence before him. To gain this god's power, he must kneel. Without a second thought, Tae-sung bows, unlocking the Disciple of God class. Instantly they vanish, reappearing at Mount Kulun's peak. Without warning, the old man boots Tae-sung straight into the crystal lake. Submerged in the depths, the system announces the start of purification, and an agonizing soul-tearing pain begins to surge through him. He nearly pulls the plug to escape the torture, but the burning memories of his betrayal fuel his will to survive. Visualizing those traitors laughing with his gear, he chokes back the tears and endures the hellish process for an entire hour. He emerges feeling like a literal god until he checks his status window. His level didn't just drop, it plummeted from 220, all the way down to level 1. As panic sets in, the master explains his former stats were completely trash and rotten. They were dead weight, holding him back from true greatness, so a total reset was mandatory. But there's a massive upside. He will now rake in 20% more experience than anyone else. Tae-sung is hyped until the master drops a bombshell. He has to endure that hell 100 more times. For 99 grueling days, he is beaten and broken in the freezing snow. Needles, poison, and relentless torture define his training as he crawls toward the finish line. Finally, the last day arrives. The master bestows a final gift. The disciple tag is gone, replaced by the broken secret class debuff master. From the ashes, Siegfried is born. His ultimate mission, to hunt down and destroy the 7 successors of his master's ancient rivals. Thrown back into the world, Siegfried lands in a dense forest instantly, staring down a massive threat lurking in the shadows. A level 25 mutant tiger charges, fangs bared, but it is carrying something weird, a tiny hamster trapped in its jaws. Armed with nothing but a sharpened stick, Siegfried lunges forward, aiming a desperate strike directly at the beast's skull. 0 damage. The stick bounces off. Smirking, he ignites his debuff skills, weakening the tiger's soul before launching the second blow. The tiger collapses instantly. As the hamster escapes, Siegfried's level rockets from 1 to 15 in a blinding flash of light. This round, chubby ball of fluff starts talking trash. Siegfried just walks away, leaving the panicking pet to beg for mercy. The system forces a soul link, sharing their levels. The pet is stuck with him, and Siegfried is clearly the one in charge. He dubs this great spirit with the most disrespectful name ever, Ham Ham. The little creature is absolutely fuming with rage. What was that squirt? Siegfried ignores the salt, telling the fuming furball they need to grind some serious power first. Deep within the city, the Mercenary Guild receptionist, a sharp NPC named Jericho, watches our hero approach the front desk. She welcomes him with a professional smile, asking what brings a low-level player like him to such a dangerous hub. Siegfried demands a mercenary license. It is the essential first step if he wants to reclaim his former glory and dominate rankings. Jericho acknowledges his status as an immortal player, but even for him the rules are set in stone, no free passes. He must endure a trial to prove his worth. Little does she know, this debuff master is simply built different. After hunting down low-tier mutants, our hero flashed a rare trophy to prove his elite status. The clerk gasped, identifying the jagged claw of a mutant tiger, a prime material for crafting gear. Siegfried started flexing, recounting how he absolutely bodied those white tigers on his journey here. This feat locked in his license, leaving the man shook, yet he still doubted this young rookie actually soloed such a beast. The skepticism forced our ragged hero back to a humble reality. The receptionist led him away to finalize the paperwork, and Siegfried officially became a licensed mercenary. But as he thanked the NPC, a sudden job offer piqued the protagonist's curiosity. Jericho revealed that a massive horde of bloodthirsty mutants was currently blitzing toward their territory. Previous raids had already left the locals traumatized. As our hero processed the escalating danger, the NPC brought up the tiger again, claiming such a monster was a total anomaly. It had never been seen in these lands before, and even weirder threats were now surfacing. Mutant wolves and buffaloes were everywhere. Our debuff master sensed something sus about a level 20 boss, spawning in a low-level starter zone. Something was definitely wrong here. With that said, a quest to defend Berman for a measly 100 gold was offered. Siegfried roasted the trash reward, forcing the embarrassed man to admit Siegfried was their only hope for survival. This region was straight up primitive, the man explained. They'd have to wait a week for any backup. Lacking comms, our picky hero, who usually ignores low-tier rewards, actually decided to make an exception. He figured the massive EXP gains would be worth the grind. To the clerk's sheer excitement, our adventurer accepted the mission. Meanwhile, over at Schreier Castle, a literal bloodbath was unfolding. Amidst the carnage, survivors begged for mercy, only to be ruthlessly executed by a monstrous blade. The creature demanded the pathetic humans bow down, declaring itself the supreme ruler of a higher race. It was the new king now. Back in Berman, our protagonist stepped out of a shop, looking fresh, but his annoying hamster pet immediately roasted him for finally not looking like a hobo. He had to ditch those raggedy training clothes eventually. Plus, our warrior was itching to test his lethal new mace. But when the pet asked for lunch, the MC lost it, since the furball had just devoured an expensive magic stone. The creature, which literally eats money, complained those low-tier stones were basically snacks, infuriating the hero who paid a fortune for them. Just as they were about to scrap, three strangers approached, recognizing the man who soloed the tiger. They'd heard the rumors of his legendary kill. A man named Manbok Jang stepped forward to introduce himself. He was joining the quest too, along with his comrades Thompson and the ally Ruigi. Ruigi was instantly obsessed with the cute spirit. The MC realized these were the fellow players the clerk had mentioned earlier. Deciding to play nice, the protagonist reached out for a handshake and introduced himself. Suddenly, the trio officially nominated him as their raid leader. They insisted Siegfried take the lead since he was a verified tiger slayer. Their honesty actually surprised him. And just like that, a party was formed. Thompson looked for orders, and the new leader stepped up. Following the clerk's intel, they headed straight for the ranch, the epicenter of the monster onslaught. The ranch was pure chaos as steel met fang. Manbok Jung found himself pinned by a savage wolf and screamed for Thompson to move. Suddenly, a spear pierced through the beast's chest. As the old-timer lamented his fading youth, his comrade sensed a massive presence closing in fast. Manbok Jang turned to see a level 25 nightmare, a mutated buffalo thundering toward them, pulverizing the earth. As the group scrambled for cover, our hero locked onto his target. He charged his mace with a heavy strike and smashed the beast's skull. The buffalo collapsed instantly, and the massive EXP surge pushed our hero to level 20. But the MC, who dreaded being exposed by other players, realized that solo play was way less of a headache. He couldn't exactly flex his OP debuffs in public. His teammates rushed over, and he played it off cool. Shrugging off a brutal impact, the big guy insisted he was totally fine before the hero could even check on them. Being a sturdy tank saved his skin, but his teammate was chugging potions and completely out of commission. Manbok Jang gushed over that insane one-shot kill. After slaying a tiger, this was just another Tuesday for our hero. Siegfried played it cool, but the atmosphere shifted. A chilling command echoed, forcing every monster to suddenly retreat. As the beasts vanished into the trees, the tank breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the quest was finally over. But Siegfried wasn't buying it. Something felt off. It was like these monsters were moving under a single sinister will. They were moving in perfect unison. Right then, a new notification flashed. Quest updated. Investigate the anomaly. The system needed to know why these loners were acting like a coordinated pack. The real grind was just beginning. He told his crew to head back to the barracks. He was going solo to scout the area. Despite their protests, the young warrior assured them he'd be fine after all. He hadn't taken a single scratch. The little hamster puffed out its chest, vowing to protect him. The tanker could only stare in pure disbelief. His buddy was once again smitten by the fluffball, but as our hero moved deeper, his worst fears were confirmed. Following the trail, he realized the terrifying truth: this monster army was marching straight for the neighboring domain. The tracks led right to their doorstep. Suddenly his pet tugged on his sleeve, pointing towards something massive. He almost scolded the little guy for wandering off, but the pet was actually alerting him to a hidden danger. Before him stood the desolate Schreier Castle. It radiated a bone-chilling aura of pure emptiness. Pushing the doors open, his jaw dropped. Hundreds of monsters were kneeling in total submission to one terrifying being. Meet Gorgor, the legendary Golden Goblin Lord, a beast with the absolute power to dominate all monster kind. A myth that only surfaces once every few centuries. The hero finally understood the sheer scale of the nightmare ahead. With the mystery solved, the hamster looked up, curious about their next suicidal move. Siegfried knew he was outmatched. He had no choice but to retreat and regroup at the military barracks. A stern, bald commander approached with an apology. This was Bullrich, the high-ranking leader of the Bierman army. Our hero introduced himself, but Bullrich already knew the name. Jericho had been singing his praises non-stop. I'd love to chat, but time is a luxury we don't have, the commander said, getting straight to business. He confirmed the goblin invasion next door, then asked the million-dollar question. Were they the ones pulling the strings? Our hero dropped the bombshell. A single goblin lord with brainwashing powers had seized Schreier with a puppet army. Schreier was fallen, and Bierman was next on the menu. The soldiers paled. If this was true, they were in deep trouble. Facing a goblin lord meant certain death. The adventurer shouted a desperate order, evacuate everyone immediately. The commander hesitated, but the tanker cut in, baffled by how they could be so clueless about their neighbors. Bullrich sighed, explaining that communication between these isolated backwater domains was practically non-existent. They were totally out of the loop. Plus, everyone was too busy fending off constant monster raids to check in. It was a perfect trap. The Goblin Lord had orchestrated these distractions to keep everyone isolated and weak. He wanted to cut them off from the world. Now 300 years of history were on the brink of total annihilation. The thought of losing their home to mere goblins was humiliating. The commanders didn't even have the heart to tell their lord. Suddenly, the hero spoke up. He had a plan. Bullrich leaned in, desperate for a glimmer of hope. Our MC broke it down. If they could just buy enough time, they could stage a massive counteroffensive. To pull this off, Siegfried needed to power level and fast. The strategy was dangerously simple. The commander needed his fastest scouts to lead the monster hordes on a wild goose chase, scattering them thin. The soldiers would lure small groups right to the hero, letting him farm them for massive experience points. Once I hit level 30, the debuff master declared, I'll join the front lines and end this. Bullrich was skeptical. Even if the hero leveled up like a monster, that Goblin Lord was a terrifying level 50. A 20-level gap is basically a death sentence. The hero knew he'd be the underdog in this fight. But remember, he took down a level 25 tiger at level 1. This guy specialized in beating the odds. Worst case scenario, he buys enough time for reinforcements to arrive and save the domain. It was a gamble, but the only choice they had. After a moment of silence, the commander made his decision. The bald warrior falls in line as Siegfried triggers a legendary quest to slay the final boss. His tiny companion begs for a snack, but he claims his pockets are completely empty. The feisty furball snaps back. It's not about food, leaving his master genuinely stunned. Our summoner freezes, realizing his familiar saw right through his lies to the commander. Demanding answers, the spirit starts flexing about how elite blessed entities like him are built different. With sharp eyes, the adventurer reveals a massive power spike coming at level 30. The skill, Supreme Contempt, is a total game changer, though victory is far from guaranteed. When asked why he's playing it safe, our hero admits he needs to keep his true strength hidden. If word got out, players would leak his broken stats to the entire world instantly. The Great Spirit thinks he's overthinking it, but the hero knows he has to be careful. One wrong move leads to betrayal. Suddenly, the tank interrupts his secret meeting with the bald man. He offers a quick apology for taking the lead, but the squad is already locked in. The swordsman logs out to hit the hay, warning our hero that he's grinding way too hard. Deciding to call it a night, the hamster looks up at him with one final question. He confirms it's time for a break, tossing the furball some cash for a luxury treat. The spirit is hyped, but it quickly realizes its master was capping about being broke. As he disconnects, the hero admits his deception before waking up in the real world. He climbs out of the capsule, feeling like a wreck, his back screaming for some actual food. But with no time to spare, he chooses a quick nap over a meal to recharge his brain. Reality sinks in. Berman is ashes, and he's officially flying solo in this cruel world. He thinks back to meeting Dias and snagging that rare hidden class for his new mission. Protecting Berman is the goal, even if he originally joined for the bag and some cold revenge. But now, he's actually vibing. It's a relief to know his inner child is still alive. He's itching to dive back into the grind, but his bed is calling his name. Forget sleep, he's heading back to the VR world to hit max level before the ultimate showdown. A sudden knock at the door breaks his focus, and he cautiously peeks outside. No visitors were expected, yet 2 workers are standing there with a brand new capsule. He's confused since he didn't order a thing, but the paperwork has his name and address. The delivery guys are just doing their job, handing over a cryptic note to the hero. The message praises him for unlocking code 007, a feat only a legend could pull off. It all clicks. This is a perk of being a deep master, where hidden classes get insane rewards. Hive sent this as a gift, and the young man is absolutely losing it with joy. He swings the door wide open, inviting the crew in with drinks and a huge smile. The workers are stunned by his sudden energy, unaware they're being watched from the shadows. Mr. Lee reports back to HQ, confirming the high-tech capsule is officially in the building. When questioned why they'd drop a fortune on a complete stranger's setup, the boss struggles to find words, eventually claiming he feels a strange bond with the hero. Both are hidden class players, and this new rig is straight out of the Genesis Guildmaster's ads. It's the Ogre, a beast of a machine that most players could only dream of owning. Now this top-tier gear is sitting in his room, and he's literally drooling over it. He still can't believe Hive dropped tens of thousands on him just for code 007. Sleep is officially cancelled. It's time to see what this monster machine can really do. Logging in feels different. The comfort and hyper-realistic graphics put his old rig to shame. His senses are dialed to 11. He can actually feel the scorching heat and burning atmosphere. But wait, this level of realism is terrifying, and something feels dangerously off. Curiosity led him straight into a nightmare as he stared speechless at the village, engulfed in flames. Vicious monsters were tearing through the guard lines while sadistic goblins cackled, relishing every bloody stab. Our protagonist froze, processing the carnage until a desperate shriek pierced the air. It was his own pet. The hamster was sprinting for dear life, with a mutated wolf snapping at his heels, fearing his end. He cried that a sacred beast deserved a better exit, but before he became wolf snack, Siegfried intervened. He delivered a skull-shattering mace strike to the beast, leaving the hamster in total shock at his rescue. Siegfried reached for the fluffy spirit, but the little menace lunged at his face, screeching at him. It raged about being left behind to die. Siegfried demanded a sit rep, but the hamster just gestured around. The second every player logged out, the Goblin Lord seized the opportunity to strike the town. His army launched a full-scale invasion, and the local defenses were absolute jokes against their overwhelming power. This cowardice ignited a fire in Siegfried's soul. These monsters really waited for them to log off. Pathetic. He realized he was the solo player left to defend the walls, a fact the grumpy hamster confirmed. The pet blamed him for the mess, but our hero just smirked. Now he could finally unleash his power. The hamster felt a chill as his master prepped a mission. Nearby, a goblin licked blood off his blade. The bloodthirsty horde swarmed the remaining guards, who were making a final desperate stand to shield the women. A grizzled soldier gritted his teeth, knowing they were staring death right in the face with the kids. The streets were packed with panicking people, and he found zero ways out of this living hell. He was fuming with frustration. Just as he prepared for the end, a massive goblin lunged with a cleaver. Suddenly, a mace came hurtling through the air, crushing the monster's skull instantly. The soldier was stunned. A blur of motion shot past him, snatching the weapon mid-air. It was our main man back in action. He activated Heavy Strike and turned another goblin into mush. The stunned guard finally recognized their legendary savior. Siegfried gave a sharp nod, signaling he was up to speed before barking orders at the exhausted soldiers. He told them to prioritize the evacuation while he soloed the horde. But since he was a mercenary, the guard insisted on backing him up, only to be totally confused when the kid thanked him with a smile. Prepping his twin debuff skills to cripple the enemy, Tai-Sun Han made it clear he preferred fighting as a true lone wolf. The confusion lingered, but the guard leader respected the grind and stopped. He handed over a belt stacked with top-tier potions, earning a rare moment of gratitude from our protagonist. The man admitted his pride took a hit by leaning so hard on a lone mercenary to survive, but he chose to trust the results over his ego. Meanwhile, Tai-Sun Han stepped forward. He figured that flexing his god-tier powers in front of NPCs wouldn't cause much of a scandal anyway. His instincts flared as he snapped his weapon up just in time to catch a mutated wolf's bite. A goblin tried a sneak attack with its knife, but Siegfried threw the wolf off and pivoted. He ghosted the blade by a hair's breadth. As the monster pressed him, he felt his debuff aura, successfully draining the creature's stats. The green freak swung wildly, unleashing a barrage of clumsy regular slashes. Our hero mocked its trash-tier form, telling the goblin it should have just run for the hills. It was elementary. The second those debuffs kicked in, the MC snatched the monster by its ugly mug. He face-planted it into the dirt, boasting that he would win even without his broken skills. And then, it finally clicked why his new gear cost a literal fortune. He could predict every enemy movement perfectly. With reactions refined by Dias's hellish training, he was performing much better than with his old trash gear. The protagonist felt absolutely untouchable. As he started butchering the monsters, he finally understood the secret. This was the true reason rich gamers dominated. They had been rocking the most broken sets all along. Our hero effortlessly chained 3 heavy strikes together, proving the massive power gap between their gear sets. He dinged level 22, but he was actually disappointed given the mountain of corpses he had left behind. The level 20+ grind was officially a nightmare. Suddenly, that loudmouthed hamster reappeared screaming insults. He was leading an entire army of monsters right to them, screeching to know if this number was big enough. Our MC stood firm, declaring that the grind didn't scare him one bit. He just needed to spam skills and stack monster bodies. Suddenly, Gorgon sensed a shift. A chaotic energy crashed the party, trashing everything in sight. He crushed a soldier underfoot. He mocked him as a small fry who might actually become a problem if left to evolve. The beast realized this guy was built different. The battered commander looked up in shock. He knew instantly it was our hero. He white-knuckled his blade, ready for a final stand. Anything to buy the kid time to hit the next level. The bald warrior was locked in. He stood between the golden goblin and his ally, trash-talking the monster, before swearing to end it. The goblin lord just laughed. Getting flamed by a weakling was actually kind of hilarious to him. This loser couldn't even protect his master. Fine, the goblin would grant his death wish. He sneered that both the knight and his king were already dead, men walking. Terror gripped the commander. He prayed our hero would power up fast. Rewind 30 minutes. Ham was hard-passing on the mission. He didn't want to be monster bait, but the hero insisted they had no choice. It was the only way to level up and save everyone from a total wipeout. Still, the hamster wasn't vibing with being dragged into this mess. But the hero reminded him they were a duo, now fighting as one. He told the furball he trusted him completely. That's all it took for Ham to fold. He demanded a mountain of nuts as payment, and the deal was sealed. Fast forward to now. Siegfried tried to play nice, but Ham was fuming over being used as a distraction again. Hero thanked him anyway, reminding him they were on a tight schedule. The debuff master tried to chill. He said the mobs were cleared, but the hamster snapped, knowing it was all thanks to him. Siegfried then asked about the second mission. Ham sighed and started explaining the situation. He didn't have the boss's exact coordinates, but he had a lead the hero needed. While running for his life, Ham caught a glimpse of the castle in the distance. A massive, wicked aura was oozing from the walls. The spirit confirmed the chilling vibes. That demonic pressure, definitely the golden goblin. Our hero realized he was hunting a king. The castle's lord was likely safe, but something felt off. A heavy dread filled his chest. The commander was missing. He decided to rush in, leaving the forest spirit completely shook. He told the pet to stay safe outside. But when a monster's head twitched nearby, Ham panicked and bolted after his master straight into the goblin lord's lair. They reached the burning castle. Its massive scale left Tai Sun Han momentarily stunned. Charging in blind was suicide. He looked at the hamster, wondering why it was still following. The place was a death trap. Yet the trembling hamster insisted he was there for backup. He wanted to help in this crisis, which honestly confused the hero. The spirit asked for the game plan. This boss might be immune to everything the hero had. To the pet's horror, the hero agreed, but said there was no time for tactics. Sometimes brute force is the only answer. He lunged toward the castle gates. While Ham cursed his master's insanity, the hero absolutely smashed through the front door. He breached the castle. The hamster shrieked about him, not entering like a normal human being. The hero signaled for silence. Then he spotted something grim, the wounded commander. The knight joked that he expected a loud arrival. The hero rushed over, staring at his severed arm. Why didn't he flee with the others? Bullrich admitted that, despite being weak, he was a knight sworn to his king. This confirmed the ruler was still inside. Suddenly, a dark voice addressed Tai Sun Han. It knew exactly who was slaughtering its army. Gorgon stood there, clutching the commander's head. He praised our hero as his greatest foe yet. That's why he refused to back down. But the words left our hero spiraling in confusion. The gilded beast just sneered, doubling down on his twisted logic. Then it dropped a bombshell accusing the hero of using his men as human shields just to farm XP. Rage boiled in his veins at the insult, but the dying soldier whispered for him to stay focused. Duty called. Glancing past the monster, the MC demanded to know if the body behind him was indeed the Lord of Bearmen. The beast smirked, confirming it. Just hold on, the hero urged the commander. The bloody soldier pleaded with him to resist the monster's bait. But Gorgon just laughed. Has your mind finally snapped under the guilt? The boss mocked, seeing the hero sheathe his blade. He lunged for the kill, sneering that this weakness is why humanity is destined to lose. Sudden move. The debuff master triggered speed restriction, dragging the beast's momentum into the dirt. The massive axe sliced through nothing but empty air as the monster's timing shattered. Panic set in. The goblin lord realized he'd been played as his target vanished from sight. Then, a cold command cut through, dropped the commander. The goblin king's fury hit the ceiling. He charged like a freight train livid, a human dared boss him around. But our MC was faster. A lightning-fast kick sent the beast airborne. For a split second, the monster felt true fear. He thought he'd been surpassed, but his monstrous ego quickly crushed that possibility. Invisible chains seemed to bind his limbs. Realization dawned, his own speed had been stolen. The golden goblin roared in confusion, while the hero noted the skill worked even better than planned. Reclaiming the commander's arm, he handed it back. It belonged with its owner, not a monster. Leave the rest to me, he told the veteran, eyes locked on the boss. Since their sacrifice paved his way to leveling up, our hero decided to return the favor. He summoned his pet from the shadows, ordering it to escort the wounded to safety. It zipped into action. "Easy there, little guy," the commander muttered to the hamster, earning an indignant squeak of rage. With the stage cleared, it was down to a 1v1 against a boss itching for a bloodbath. With no distractions left, Siegfried locked in. It was time to enjoy the hunt. The final showdown ignited. Even nerfed the goblin, Lord fought with the desperation of a cornered beast. The MC danced around the massive axe, countering with a relentless barrage of bone-shattering mace strikes. Slammed into the wall, Siegfried felt the harsh reality of the level gap rattling his bones. The monster was adapting to the speed debuff, and the golden goblin sensed the shift in momentum. "Where'd that confidence go?" the beast jeered, calling the hero a fool for playing with fire. He mocked the petty tricks, claiming a mere debuff could never bridge the gap between them. The monster started monologuing about the slow, agonizing death he had planned for our protagonist. Siegfried gritted his teeth. Speed restriction was a support skill, not a miracle worker. He lacked the raw firepower to capitalize on the opening. He was running on empty. Regret bit deep, he should have used his ultimate sooner. He considered dropping the debuff to save mana. No. He shook the doubt away, eyes searching for one final opening as he charged back in. The goblin braced for a head-on clash, but he couldn't shake the feeling of another trap. Steel met claws in a violent explosion of sparks, the monster relishing every groan of pain from the hero. "Where are those reflexes now?" the beast roared, raining down a flurry of overwhelming strikes. With a guttural roar, the golden goblin choke-slammed Tae-sung Han, cratering him into the stone. Blood splattered the floor. Looming over him, the monster began to spit out his twisted ideology. He spoke of his kind being branded as barbarians, cursed with weakness from the moment they're born. But he chose to rebel against fate, dreaming of a world where goblins ruled the food chain. He wanted even the superior races to tremble. This was his divine mission as the king. "A mere mercenary could never understand," he sneered. But the hero just spat back, calling it pure carnage. To Siegfried, these cowards deserved zero respect. He kept spitting insults, pushing the goblin lord to his breaking point. Seething with rage, the monster swung his massive blade to end it. Finally, the opening our hero needed had arrived. This was the golden moment. As the slowing debuff faded, the goblin lord poured everything into one final crushing strike. The impact shattered the earth, but the beast miscalculated. His momentum shifted violently, as his weight suddenly felt completely wrong. His heavy blade buried itself deep into the dirt. Panic flared in his eyes, he'd been baited into a trap. Siegfried didn't hesitate, raining down a brutal barrage of mace strikes. The once mighty lord was now just a helpless punching bag. But just as the killing blow descended, the monster let out a sharp, desperate whistle that pierced the air. Suddenly, a massive shadow lunged. The goblin's loyal steed charged headfirst to shield its master from certain death. Siegfried was hurled back as Gorgon scoffed, claiming he only held back to avoid wrecking his precious castle. He admitted his surprise, never imagining a mere human brat would force him to actually try this hard. Then the monster smirked. The games were over. His real power wasn't strength, it was the dark art of brainwashing. He prepared to unleash his ultimate creation, a terrifying mutant slave under his total control. Without warning, he commanded the beast to attack. The mutated tiger blurred into motion, its razor-sharp claws gleaming with lethal intent. It slammed Siegfried into the stone wall with bone-shattering force. Gorgon cackled, telling the hero to feel honored. Dying in a royal castle was a privilege, right? But through the dust, Siegfried's voice rang out with chilling confidence. "You're the only one dying today," he growled, recalling the monster's insults about him being just a lonely mercenary. The beast claimed he lacked vision, but Siegfried was about to prove him dead wrong. In a flash, he unleashed Supreme Contempt. This legendary skill negated the Lord's damage while making his own attacks lethal. Despite the monster's higher level, Siegfried stood his ground, a dangerous glint flickering in his eyes. "I'm no ordinary sellsword," he roared, launching a final strike. "I am the debuff master." As the Goblin Lord crumbled and the quest clear screen flashed, Siegfried knew he was destined for greatness. He was born to stand at the peak. As the sun dipped below the horizon, this bloody chapter finally closed. The mind-controlled monsters were finally liberated. With the Golden Goblin erased from existence, Monbok Jang cuffed one of his men, a grin spreading as he realized Siegfried had actually pulled it off. Every last goblin was dealt with. Soon the survivors began banding together to pick up the pieces. They fought to rebuild their home. Meanwhile, back at the barracks, Siegfried slammed back a high-grade potion with pure satisfaction. As his HP bar filled up, he shouted that nothing beats a cold potion after a life-or-death brawl. The onlookers stared, but Siegfried was lost in thought, still buzzing from taking down a boss entirely solo. He knew it was a gamble. If his mana had run dry before that final skill, he'd be toast. That monster nearly had him. Luckily, his level gap ability was leagues ahead of his standard debuffs. But with such a massive cooldown, he had to be smart. Just as he was plotting his next move, realizing his secret wouldn't stay hidden for long, a familiar face approached to check on his wounds. It was the one-armed commander Bullrich. The bald veteran beamed, praising the kid for his insane combat energy. Siegfried looked better already. When asked if he needed sleep, Bullrich just laughed, claiming he was dying of boredom. He had orders to escort our hero to the inner sanctum. Siegfried immediately asked how the Lord was holding up. The man was in rough shape earlier, but Bullrich confirmed the Lord pulled through thanks to Siegfried's timely arrival. His health was returning. Bullrich chuckled, noting his master's incredible warrior spirit. Warrior health. Siegfried doubted that, recalling the man's frail state. He then glanced at Bullrich's empty sleeve. He apologized quietly, feeling guilty that the commander lost an arm because he didn't arrive sooner. But Bullrich just smiled. He felt nothing but deep gratitude toward the young man. Siegfried had saved the entire domain. To Bullrich, a single arm was a small price for his people's safety. His homeland was secure, and that was all that mattered. Siegfried nodded, recognizing a true, selfless knight. The compliment turned the commander red. He urged Siegfried to hurry inside as the entire castle was waiting. Baron Bergman greeted them, his hands shaking with emotion as he faced the savior of his lands. Siegfried was relieved to see the old man standing. With a confident smirk, he finally introduced himself. The name Siegfried carried massive weight, forcing the Baron to bow low before his legendary savior. He tried to act humble, but a savage back spasm suddenly sent him hitting the dirt. Guards scrambled to his side, while the hero remembered the commander's warning about the Baron's health. The old man winced and apologized, admitting that his recovery was far from over. Before the thanks could continue, Siegfried played it down, claiming he was just a paid soldier. He insisted he wasn't special, but the Baron dismissed his modesty as total nonsense. He had risked his life to shield Bierman single-handedly, saving their peaceful land from ruin. He'd crushed the goblin threat, and Siegfried's eyes sparkled the moment a gift was mentioned. It was his quest loot. Overjoyed, the young warrior followed the old man deep into the castle. He hoped the reward matched the hell he'd survived. As they entered the grand fortress, Siegfried recognized the chamber from his Gorgon fight, but its true massive scale was absolutely mind-blowing. It looked like a holy altar. The Baron explained how his ancestor, a master collector, built this vault. He built it for his treasures, but only a few rare relics remained after centuries of loss. Without hesitation, the old man told the boy to take anything he found valuable inside. Siegfried opened the box and froze. It was a coupon for the legendary Mercedes Atelier. For millennia, the continent had seen the simultaneous rise of magic, science, and master forging. These three paths eventually merged, fusing into a single craft that defied the laws of nature. This birthed artifacts, the pinnacle of smithing and alchemy, guarded by the world's three great workshops. They dominated the artifact market, starting with Autonica, the masters of futuristic, high-tech gear. Then came Birth, the chameleon's deadly weapons, but the Mercedes Atelier remained the undisputed G.O.A.T. These three companies were legends across the continent, famously known as the Three Great Workshops. The prize for slaying the Goblin Lord was a golden ticket to the world's finest forge. Seeing the coupon's power, he realized it could flawlessly enhance any item to perfection. He had 12 uses regardless of level. Siegfried was stunned. This was worth over 1,000 gold. The Baron explained that 700 years ago, a struggling Mercedes Atelier faced total bankruptcy. They sold these coupons for 1,000 gold, an insane price for a brand new, unproven shop. It was a tiny atelier until one legendary individual stepped in to save the future giants. That savior was none other than the Baron's own ancestor, the great Count Graham. Whether it was a genius investment or pure pity, the Count's gamble changed history forever. That move brought insane profit, and now the Baron knew exactly what to do next. The coupon finally found its true master, even if Siegfried worried the reward was too massive. The old man insisted it was never his to keep. It was destined for a true hero. It was meant for a worthy descendant of the Count, but that heir never appeared. Seeing the Baron struggle to praise his own son, Siegfried realized the kid was likely hopeless. Then the old man asked for a favor, instantly piquing our protagonist's burning curiosity. He explained that during the battle he briefly woke up while being carried to safety. In that moment he saw the fierce, unstoppable fire burning within the young man's eyes. Siegfried turned red as the noble began praising him, claiming he saw true greatness then. He was destined for fame, so the Baron asked him to look after his son. The noble wanted to make a legendary investment of his own, just like the Count did. His intuition was sharp despite his quirks. After a moment of thought, the hero finally agreed. He promised to help the noble's son, triggering a new quest to the bustling capital. To repay the father's kindness, he accepted, then realized he probably got the coupon anyway. He felt slightly scammed, but as he left the castle, he began planning his next move. That Mercedes coupon was his golden ticket. Selling it would make him insanely rich overnight. A ticket to clearing his crushing debts and snagging a luxury condo for his mom. Yet a chilling thought crossed his mind. He could practically hear his master's roar, envisioning the brutal beatdown he'd receive for such a brain-dead blunder. Opting for caution, he stashed the plan for later, knowing plenty of other ways to stack that gold existed. Suddenly, Siegfried realized his hamster had vanished, nowhere to be found after a whole day of radio silence. He prayed his furry companion hadn't gotten tangled in another shady side hustle. Speak of the devil. The great forest spirit was out there, shamelessly shaking its belly and twerking for a crowd of bewildered spectators. While adventurers goggled at the creature's sheer cuteness, it made one thing clear: these pro moves weren't free. The little diva bagged an acorn reward, but instead of stopping the hyped-up furball, decided to level up the act by mocking its idiot owner, completely oblivious to the shadow looming behind it. Tae-sung-han stared down the shameless rodent, catching it red-handed in its disrespectful performance. It'd do anything for a snack, but claimed being broke forced its hand. As they bickered over the pet's expensive taste in monostones, Manbok Jang interrupted, announcing they had been hunting for him. The hero mentioned his royal appointment, prompting the man to remind him about the unpaid commission fee he was there to collect, especially since the fat one bragged about his massive in-game payday. It was a record-breaking haul, unlike his buddy who choked and bailed at the final second. Tae-sung-han kept quiet about his legendary workshop coupon, letting the man enjoy his moment of pure bliss. The receptionist greeted him warmly, and the protagonist genuinely felt relieved to see a friendly face. Thanks to the hero's intervention, he'd escaped unscathed even if the guild hall was now a total wreck. Repairing the structural damage would cost a fortune, but Jericho still handed over the promised bounty. 5,000 gold landed in his pockets. The hero apologized for the wreckage before the receptionist winked. Sensing the hidden rewards from the Lord, the NPC promised to keep things hush-hush, a total bro move. With that settled, the hero dropped a heavy question, instantly grabbing the guild worker's attention. The Goblin Slayer needed the tea. Where exactly were the remains of the Golden Goblin? Jericho pointed him toward the Blue Man's Lake. He revealed a dark detail. His lordship had impaled the Goblin Lord on a stake as a brutal warning to any deserters. Jericho called it a massacre, but the hero realized the old man's heart was colder than ice. Quest complete. The young warrior prepared to leave, reflecting on the insane level gains from his short stay. Had Dios planned this power-up from the start? It felt too perfect to be a simple coincidence. He whispered a silent thanks to his master for this legendary start. Suddenly, the air turned heavy. A monstrous presence erupted, screaming for its disciple and demanding to know if he was inside. The ear-splitting roar vibrated through the protagonist's skull, nearly blowing his eardrums out. Siegfried froze. The voice felt hauntingly familiar, making him think his master was waiting to ambush him outside. A massive crowd gathered, awestruck by the raw power radiating from the NPC. The hero pushed forward, but the man standing there wasn't Dios. The stranger locked eyes with our hero and declared him his disciple. Siegfried pointed to himself, confused as hell, asking if the old man was actually talking to him. The stranger nodded. The hamster trembled, assuming this terrifying powerhouse was the hero's actual master. Siegfried denied it, but the man's aura was undeniable. He activated his rune of insight. His jaw dropped. Standing there was level 361, Wethagus the Sword Emperor, a member of the Stellar Five. Noticing the kid's shock, the old man smirked, realizing his reputation preceded him. He struck a pose. He was the master of the single-edged blade, capable of cleaving through anything in existence. He claimed the top spot among the Stellar Five, unleashing a suffocating wave of pure aura. Every player knew the Stellar Five legendary warriors who became masters of the continent. Tae-sung-han was stunned to find a level 361 here, remembering his level 999 master. Maybe the middle of nowhere was just a magnet for overpowered NPCs. He didn't have long to think. The Emperor appeared, instantly startling the hero, who demanded to know why he was being claimed as a student. "My word is absolute," the Sword Emperor boomed, eyeing the hero like a total rookie. He began a grand lecture on the world's power scale and the legendary Stellar Five. But our boy shut him down, reciting the group's details before the old man could finish. Hearing his elite squad described so casually made the Emperor's blood boil with frustration. Tae-sung-han dropped a bombshell. He already had a master. The atmosphere turned ice cold. "Dump him," the Emperor scoffed. "A talent like yours belongs under my wing instead." Fuming at the disrespect, Siegfried snapped that the old man needed to watch his mouth. He claimed his master was a god compared to the Emperor, maybe even a sovereign three. "No, Tae-sung-han corrected him. His teacher reached heights the Stellar Five couldn't even imagine." The Sword Emperor scoffed at such a claim. After 120 years of brutal training, he had reached the peak, yet the triumph felt hollow, leaving a crushing void in his soul. Despite achieving his lifelong dream, true fulfillment remained just out of reach for the legend. That was when he saw it, a simple swordsman passing his legacy down to a young student. In that moment, the 120-year-old master realized what he was missing. He couldn't let his ultimate techniques die with him. He needed a worthy successor immediately. He scoured every corner of the continent, hunting for a genius to inherit his blade's soul. But every candidate was a bust, either total weirdos or already 1 foot in the grave. Panic set in. Training takes 20 years, and at his age, time was a luxury he lacked. Finally, he reached Berman. He explained his long journey and his desperate search for greatness. One look at the youth and he knew this boy was the chosen one for his legacy. Even after hearing the legend's tragic backstory, the kid gave him a hard pass. Cold. If words wouldn't work, a game would. The Emperor wasn't taking no for an answer today. Trapped by a monster-tier opponent, a new quest window flickered to life before the hero's eyes. Realizing he was boxed in, our protagonist sighed and asked for the rules of this challenge. Simple with Awangas grinned. Just land one solid hit on me, and you win the round. Any scratch, any bruise, if the boy could draw blood with one strike, the victory was his. Feeling cocky, the old man swore he wouldn't use a single drop of mana against him. He would rely solely on his armor, a plan the young warrior found absolutely insulting. As the Emperor kept flexing his ego, the hero focused on that no mana promise. With Awangas offered him one last chance to back out, but the vibe had shifted. The youth asked if he even knew his name. The Emperor shrugged, names were for later. Drawing his mace, the hero realized the old man only wanted a vessel, not a person. He didn't want a student, he wanted a clone. Taesung-han ignited every skill he had. I will never serve a man who sees disciples as mere tools, he spat, eyes burning. The Emperor just laughed. Save the trash talk for when you actually land a hit, kid. But Taesung-han wasn't playing. He charged forward, his aura screaming with absolute confidence. The master figured the rookie would target a specific limb, trying to nerf his legendary defense. He stood firm, certain that no cheap tricks from a low-level brat could ever pierce him. He predicted exactly where the debuff would land, waiting to laugh at the pathetic attempt. But wait, something was wrong. The area being targeted was already a natural weak point. Before he could react, the hero swung his mace with a force that defied all logic. A deafening shockwave erupted, blasting the crowd back in a daze of pure, unadulterated chaos. No one understood what happened. The onlookers were still debating the boy's talent from earlier. They were talking about his Goblin Lord kill, when the unthinkable happened right before them. Jericho's jaw dropped. A legend of the Stellar Five had been silenced while standing perfectly still. His suspicions were spot on. Even elite masters couldn't shield their vital organs. Despite the slight guilt, he swore this would be the last time he played such risky games. But then, a prize was mentioned, and it hit him he'd actually won. Still, Taesung-han's only real wish for a reward was to never cross paths with this geezer again. Suddenly, his dizzy hamster piped up, demanding a sit rep. The youth checked his furball, who grumbled about a massive migraine thanks to the old man's heavy-handed strike, which actually put his mind at ease. Time to bounce, before that swordsman wakes up, he whispered urgently. Wait, he had unfinished business first. Ham chimed in, reminding him they were still hunting for the Golden Goblin. He needed that goblin blood fresh. If it spoiled, he'd lose out on a massive payday at the market. With their goal set, the duo vanished into the shadows. Let's rewind 30 years ago. A level 500 python terrorized the Sahoka ruins in McKellen. It was a legendary hotspot for mid-tier adventurers, usually levels 40 to 60. A massive guild loomed nearby where players scrambled to find the perfect squad, while pros hawked power leveling services for gold. Amidst the chaos, a brown-haired girl looked totally fed up, desperate for a teammate. That's when a random guy walked up, clearly eyeing her recruitment post, offering his services as a dealer to test his new gear. But he was in for a rude awakening, because she only wanted a buffer. He stomped off, annoyed. It seemed like every squad was hunting for that one specific class. Gozran, a level 48 elemental mage, couldn't believe there wasn't a single priest in sight, let alone a buffer. It dawned on her that the entire server was fighting over support players. She'd been standing there for hours, ready to throw in the towel. But right as she lost hope, a mysterious new player caught her eye. He looked like a total newbie wandering into the ruins. Curiosity piqued, she popped a rune of insight to peep his stats. What she saw left her completely floored. Gozran intercepted our hero immediately. He and his pet were confused, especially with that shimmering aura radiating off him. Blushing hard, she asked if he'd join her squad. Cut to later, we see the MC settling his bills via a payment kiosk. After that quest, he had to face his real-world nightmare, his father's massive $225,000 debt. It was weird, though. The usual loan sharks who loved breathing down his neck hadn't shown up lately. He took the win and headed out for a celebratory meal, praying those thugs stayed gone for good. Then he spotted a luxury ride with a girl inside. He couldn't help but guess how much that Flexmobile cost, comparing it to the gold he'd just farmed. Scoring that golden goblin kill was nothing but pure, dumb luck, since noobs like him rarely stumbled onto high-tier quests with massive payouts. The economy in Brave New World was brutal, mirroring reality. High-level players 200 and up basically ran the world, monopolizing the best quests while charging lower levels for carries and power leveling. If you were cracked at the game, you could actually go pro. Not only that, top-tier players could pivot to streaming if they had the riz. This meant our hero could finally secure the bag once he leveled up, despite currently owning absolutely nothing. But his VR capsule, Taesung-han, fantasized about owning a supercar and living large. complete with a luxury penthouse. Of course, he also hoped to find a gorgeous girl to share his life with, but reality called when his pet snapped him out of it. Siegfried turned to Gosran, asking her to repeat herself since he'd been zoning out. Once he heard she needed a buffer for her squad, it clicked. She'd used a rune of insight on him, mistaking him for a support class. He felt like a total clown for thinking she was actually flirting with him. He was ready to say no, but Hamming jumped the gun and accepted for him. He started roasting the pet, but the hamster didn't care. He teased his dense master for not noticing the girl's obvious interest. While they bickered, Gosran watched, fascinated by the little furball. With no way out, he finally caved to the hamster's antics, knowing he'd have to show his hand eventually. "Can I just stay back and buff?" he asked. Gosran nodded quickly. That was perfectly fine. Since they already had enough firepower for the front line, she hit him with the ultimate puppy dog eyes, begging him to join. The hamster flashed a devious smirk as his master stood there completely speechless. And just like that, the deal was sealed. By evening, he teamed up with the elemental mage. Exploring the western ruins, the hero pondered his path. These ruins were once a massive city obliterated by Python, the lightning serpent, 30 years ago. Even with the beast dead, its foul energy stained the very land. This created a sanctuary for light monsters. Suddenly, everything clicked for our hero. Their light powers finally made sense. Meanwhile, a teammate questioned the mage's choices. He openly mocked the hero, judging him solely on his pathetic level. She countered that his support role was crucial while they held the front. Promising to protect him, she left the man wondering if she was too naive. He scoffed at her kindness, doubting a debuffer could contribute anything useful. Gosran explained that healers were rare, urging the team to push forward regardless. Suddenly, her instincts flared. She shoved her companion's head down just in time. They narrowly dodged a lethal strike. Siegfried realized they were finally facing the infection. Level 35. Laserlings appeared, vicious light spirits born from the python's ancient lingering curse. They always hunted in swarms. "Prepare for battle," the leader commanded, her voice steady. She took the center while the tanker moved to parry the incoming assault. She ordered the protagonist to provide long-range support from the back line. The spirit lizards lunged. A brutal clash between man and monster instantly erupted. The swordsman unleashed a heavy strike, but the team screamed at him. They told him to avoid damage, but he boasted about being untouched. He reminded them they lacked any real healers or buffers to save them. He dismissed debuffs as useless garbage, clearly annoyed by the hero's presence. Despite the shared loot, he wanted bigger prey, until strange dots appeared on him. Confusion washed over him as something fast closed in on his position. Too slow to react, he was hammered from every side, taking massive damage. He fell hard. The team watched in horror as countless laserlings surrounded them. The swarm was massive. Gosran frantically ordered everyone to fall back, but they were cornered. The mage regretted not anticipating this sudden enemy surge. Desperate, she handed out 3 return scrolls to her teammates, preparing to die. She would fight alone. Suddenly, the hero stepped up to the front line. He called those scrolls useless. Gosran froze. He had predicted her sacrificial move. He scolded her for not saving herself. The hero saw through her facade. Her self-sacrifice was typical for someone with such a pure, kind soul. "People will just use you," he warned, his eyes narrowing with intent. He urged her to save herself, leaving her stunned and terrified for him. Tae-sung Han insisted they weren't in danger. Then the entire world shifted. Zone of Mortality and Zone of Frailty activated, consuming the entire battlefield. With his debuffs active, the hero declared the laserlings were now easy prey. The 4-man party rallied, launching a fierce counterattack against the swarm. Adrenaline pumping, the swordsman charged, tearing through the lizards with newfound ease. Each slash was lethal. He marveled at how weak his enemies had become. The hero warned them the lizards were fragile, but their power remained high. One mistake meant death. Siegfried was stunned by how the battle changed. He was leveling up effortlessly, gaining massive experience just by casting simple spells. He considered specializing as a debuffer. Just then, a warning rang out. A lizard lunged from the shadows, but the mage dove in to protect him. She rushed to his side, checking for injuries, while he breathed out a shaky thank you for the clutch save. Recalling her lightning-fast movements to protect the team, our hero realized her reflexes were absolutely god-tier. She was born to be a high-tier archer or rogue, making him realize she was totally wasting her potential. Instead, she was stuck as an elemental mage, but when the level-up light flashed, everyone's jaws dropped. With the whole party jumping levels so quickly, any outsider would have reported them for straight-up hacking. When a passerby asked about their city raid, Siegfried stepped up to break down exactly how things went down. He grinned, feeling the high of proving his worth to a team that had literally doubted him minutes ago. Suddenly, the loudest skeptic switched up shamelessly, claiming he'd had total faith in the hero since day one. Tae-sung Han smirked. Seeing this guy suck up to him made it clear why high-tier debuffers usually acted like tyrants. Before he could react, the girl admitted she'd never seen a class quite like his in the entire game. Its nerfing power was insane, and when she asked if it was a hidden class, he knew he had to lie. If I were a hidden class, he lied, I would be chilling in a top guild, letting them power level me for free. When pressed about his rank, he shrugged it off as just a unique class, only good for throwing out debuffs. Even with the game's strict 4-rank system, the guy figured this was just some weird new update from the devs. With his secondary class still a secret, Taesung-han knew he had to keep his guard up at all times. He worried he'd shown too much, but his thoughts were cut short when the mage walked right up to him. She handed over the loot, low-grade light crystals, harvested from the cold remains of the python. When he hesitated at the massive haul, she insisted that the MVP support always gets first dibs on the treasures. She thanked him for the smoothest dungeon run ever, and honestly, he wasn't about to turn down free loot. Grabbing his hand, she looked up with those puppy dog eyes and asked if he'd stick around for more. Finding a new crew would be a huge pain anyway, so he agreed to extend his stay for one more round. The party was hyped. Having a pro-tier debuffer on their side meant every raid was about to be a breeze. Siegfried was just glad to finally play normal for once, even as his hamster pet roasted him for his choices. It was all for her, really. Fast forward 7 days and our hero was officially a staple of the squad. They wrapped up their business at the Sokcho Hotel, even though they hadn't triggered any legendary world quests yet. Taesung still scored some wins, stacking new support skills in his kit, until his pet chimed in with a question. Doing the usual ritual before logging, the pet asked. Taesung nodded. He had to squeeze every bit of value from his skills. Step 1. Gather all the crystals from the mission. Step 2. Unleash his latest, most broken ability. Activating Absorb attributes, he consumed the stones, gaining 0.36 light resistance in an instant. He also gained 0.36 light energy, a level 35 perk that literally lets him eat elements. This skill builds up his defense and eventually crafts a whole new ability once the energy meter hits the max. It was the ultimate way to refine his kit, though he still had no clue how much more energy he'd need. An upgrade was still miles away, and to top it off, Siegfried was already planning his exit strategy from the group. Once he hit level 45 and unlocked Flying Spur, it would be time to say his final goodbyes. He was ready to dip the next day, but then he remembered the mage's soft, pleading voice. Her asking him to stay made his face heat up, so he decided to ghost that decision for just a bit longer. Sunrise hit the world of BNW and Taesung-han rushed through the door, offering a quick apology for the delay. The place was swarming with players, prompting him to ask his pet if he'd missed some massive server event. The hamster was just as confused, but then a random adventurer's eyes went wide as he spotted our hero. It's the debuff master, they screamed, and suddenly everyone was swarming him with desperate party invites. Taesung was drowning in a sea of thirsty players when a hand suddenly reached out and snatched him away. It was the mage using her wind magic to blast a path through the suffocating crowd of fans. She ripped 2 return scrolls open, and before the hero could even blink, the debuff master vanished into thin air. They materialized in a distant zone, where Gazran finally stepped up to explain why things had gotten so crazy. While the teleportation left her feeling nauseous, Taesung recognized this spot. It was exactly where their first deal went down. Gazran sighed in relief, thanking her lucky stars she'd set this teleport point before things went south. Safe for now, but Siegfried wasn't having it. He demanded to know what the hell was happening. In response, Gazran pulled up a clip. It was him unleashing those game-breaking debuffs in absolute 4K. The kicker. This video was currently blowing up across the entire Brave New World community. Before she could drop a name, it clicked. The cameraman was the only guy missing from the party. Gazran confirmed the worst, that Rat had abandoned the group and leaked the footage for clout. He likely waited until he was miles away before hitting the upload button. Gazran looked devastated by the betrayal, but Siegfried already knew this type, the fake nice backstabbers. Seeing this snake reminded him of a certain trash-tier guildmate from his past. Gazran apologized through gritted teeth, blaming her own stubbornness for dragging the hero into this mess. Siegfried waved it off. Honestly, he was just glad they'd plucked him out of that chaotic crowd. As for his next move, he needed to grind to level 45 and fast. Gazran hesitated, her heart racing as she tried to summon the courage to make a move. With a slight blush dusting her cheeks, she finally asked, "Want to party up? Just us two." She pointed out how quiet the zone had become. No monsters in sight compared to before. That peace was all thanks to their squad, and more specifically his insane support skills. Siegfried felt the sweat break. A duo. With her, this definitely wasn't part of the plan. He should have said no, but one look at her radiant angelic smile and he was cooked. His hamster familiar just smirked, reading his mind and teasing that the girl was definitely thirsty. Taesung-han flared up at the furball's sass. This little guy was getting way too bold. The spirit just rolled its eyes, calling its master a total noob when it comes to girls. Plus, it reminded him that, as he levels up, Ham evolves and unlocks legendary new skills. The mood shifted instantly when Gazran leaned in close, her eyes sparkling with pure wonder. Seeing a pet with such high-tier powers was rare, but the hamster wasn't about to be disrespected. "Correction, Miss Crush," it chirped. It was a great forest spirit bound by an equality contract. Gazrin immediately apologized. She'd totally misread the vibe since the spirit kept calling him master. The spirit shrugged, admitting it only played along because Gazrin was such an angelic beauty. Siegfried eventually cut to the chase. Why was she being so incredibly nice to him? Was it just for his debuff mastery? Gazrin smirked, admitting that was only half of it. Taesung Han's brain short-circuited when she mentioned his looks, played a major role in her interest. His heart nearly stopped, but she just giggled. It was just a prank. Or was it? Gazrin admitted she wanted his class at first, but now she wanted him for something else. His curiosity piqued. She looked him in the eye and called him a total mystery. It wasn't just his avatar she liked. She wanted to know the man behind the screen. Flustered, he claimed he was nothing special, but she saw right through his humble front. Through their short time together, she'd already seen the hero's true kind heart. She noted he was no ordinary support. He didn't just spam buffs, he micromanaged their every move on the battlefield. From checking gear durability to counting every last potion, his precision was insane. The mage couldn't help but admit that she'd never seen a support this cracked and attentive. Little did she know these were just muscle memory reflexes, leftovers from his glory days as a top-tier guildmaster. Gazrin confessed that this mystery only made her more hyped to uncover the man behind the Siegfried avatar. But our hero just shrugged, claiming his real life was NPC-level boring. Suddenly, the earth groaned and split wide open, swallowing the trio into a dark, bottomless abyss. Confusion turned to terror as they were literally buried alive in seconds. Then a sharp system ping echoed in Han's mind, warning him of a forced blackout that would last exactly 5 seconds. Moments later, the legend snapped back to consciousness. Gasping for air, Taesung Han realized he'd been knocked out cold by the fall. As he questioned why the floor decided to delete itself, his teammate rushed over to check his vitals, accompanied by his loyal spirit companion. Right away, Han caught a glimpse of the elemental mage's condition, noticing her mangled shoulder, despite her acting like it was nothing. She'd actually tanked the falling debris just to shield him. He immediately apologized for dragging her into this mess, but she just gave him a reassuring nod, claiming her HP was already regenerating thanks to a high-grade potion. Then her expression turned serious, as she asked if he felt the weird vibes of this place. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled into an Osric cult lab hidden under the rubble, a faction Han had zero intel on. Gazrin was equally lost, but the eerie atmosphere told her everything she needed to know. This place was sus. She guessed this underground facility was the ground zero for the recent monster surge in the region. Seeing the piles of lesserling corpses everywhere, it was clear this wasn't just some random basement. A dungeon like this shouldn't even be on the map, meaning they had accidentally triggered a hidden dungeon event. These secret zones were gold mines for unique quests and elite bosses, much like that golden goblin encounter. Gazrin cringed as Han's eyes literally turned into dollar signs, his brain already calculating the massive loot drop. While she worried about their survival in such a high-difficulty zone with just a 2-man squad, Siegfried's senses tingled as someone approached. A battered, bloodied man stumbled in and collapsed right at their feet. A quick glance between them was all it took to move into rescue mode. They quickly pumped him full of healing potions. The survivor gasped out his thanks, prompting the duo to grill him on who or what did this to him. He revealed he was an operative for the Guardians, sent here on a sting operation against the Osric cult. They thought it was a simple hideout, but the cultists inside were absolute monsters compared to the intel. Outmatched and desperate, he begged our heroes to finish the mission and stop the cult's twisted plans. Recognizing the scent of a hidden quest, Han locked in and asked for the mission objectives. The Guardian explained they had to smash 5 ritual orbs to stop some ancient world-ending disaster from waking up. Suddenly, cultist scouts spotted them and charged in for the kill. Seeing their robes, Han knew the party was officially starting. Han told Gazrin to guard the wounded NPC while he handled the trash mobs, but she warned him it was suicide. Since a support with only debuffs shouldn't be frontline tanking, Han just smiled, noting he owed her one for saving his pet earlier. He then made her promise one thing: turn off the cameras and don't record a single second of what was about to happen. As the cultists closed in, Han took a deep breath, his hidden power beginning to surge. In a flash, he one-tapped the entire squad before they could even scream. Siegfried promised that as long as she kept quiet, this dungeon was already as good as cleared. One survivor was pinned against the wall, looking absolutely terrified. His gear screamed adventurer, but his soul belonged to the cult. Han didn't care about his life story, though. He just wanted the lab's coordinates. Talk, and maybe, just maybe, he'd let the cultist keep his head. The zealot spat back that his kind didn't fear the Reaper. He even had the audacity to threaten Han, warning him of a divine smackdown for trespassing. That's when Siegfried's patient expression completely vanished. Despite his trembling voice, the man claimed torture wouldn't break him. Han just let out a cold chuckle, explaining that he wasn't looking for info, he just needed a punching bag after a boring week of no action. With a terrifying glint in his eyes, Han whispered that he was curious to see just how long that loyalty would last. Terrified of a skull-crushing end, the thug spilled the exact coordinates to the hidden laboratory. A brutal headshot rewarded his cowardice, but the secret location was finally in our hero's hands. He spotted the hunger in her eyes. She was dying to know the truth behind his hidden power. He promised to reveal his secrets after the quest, and surprisingly, Gosran agreed to play along. As they departed, a guardian watched with a suspicious glare. Meanwhile, deep within the mangled ruins, inside, the decimated lab cultists scrambled over the bodies of their fallen to salvage sensor equipment. Deep beneath the rubble, a scavenger hissed in frustration, tossing aside a now worthless classified document. High Priest Romulus roared in fury, blaming the Guardians for sabotaging their research at the finish line. The man spat back, declaring their sole mission was to crush every vile plot, threatening the world. But mid-heroic speech, the High Priest's blade erupted through his chest in a spray of crimson. Romulus ordered the trash cleared, and demanded news on the escaped rat. A subordinate quickly began explaining. The prey was wounded and nearby, prompting the priest to mock the Guardians' pathetic failed attempts. Their failure was absolute. The madman basked in the vision of his enemies, watching the world burn. As the ritual began, a massive fireball crashed into the giant egg, shattering the dark silence. The High Priest's jaw dropped in disbelief. Reality was about to hit the madman like a truck. This was no dream. Siegfried smirked, tossing a compliment to the elemental mage for her pinpoint accuracy. The priest sneered, expecting more guardians, but our hero just laughed at his pathetic assumption. He was wrong. Realization dawned on Romulus: every single henchman outside had already been slaughtered. Panicked, the High Priest commanded the resurrection to begin. The lever was thrown. The machine roared. Chaotic energy surged as the ritual commenced. New objective: destroy all 5 orbs and do it fast. With only 5 minutes to stop a disaster, Siegfried drew steel, ready to hold back the cultists. He ordered his partner to snipe the orbs. Gosran hesitated, worried, but he gave a confident nod. With the fodder cleared, our protagonist locked eyes with the High Priest. This boss was no joke. He lunged forward like a bullet, shouting for the girl to finish the quest. The endgame started. Romulus barked a death sentence. 2 elite guards charged the distance, vanishing in a literal heartbeat. Aiming for his throat, the first guard swung a halberd, but the debuff master parried perfectly. He slid past a lethal blade and smashed his elbow into the first attacker's jaw with force. He swung his mace, launching the second goon back. Suddenly, he felt a presence at his spine. The first thug went for a backstab. Siegfried spun instantly, clashing his mace against the enemy's steel. Suddenly, toxic green magic erupted. The spell connected point blank, catching our hero completely off guard. A violent explosion rocked the room, vaporizing the henchman. Siegfried scoffed at the priest's ruthless, friendly fire. Imagine nuking your own man. Romulus just smirked, finding the hero's sense of justice absolutely hilarious. Watching the protagonist use a corpse as a shield, the priest realized he faced a true monster. He finally admitted it. Siegfried was a beast that he couldn't possibly handle in a fair fight. Siegfried figured the old man was surrendering, since his entire squad was now face down and dead. But Romulus grinned. He had friends as a ghostly green vapor began coiling around the hero's throat. He slashed at the mist, realizing these were wraiths. Romulus laughed, revealing his true dark nature. He was a dark priest, a necromancer fueled by souls. Near a corpse, his power was infinite. Invincibility was his. The level 55 necromancer hungered to add Siegfried's soul to his undead legion. A swarm of spirits lunged. Our hero tried to retreat, but the spectral hunt had already begun. He swung his mace in a wide arc, but the ghosts phased right through his heavy weapon. His HP began to tank. These life-leeching spirits ignored physical defense, draining his very soul. Panic set in. If he couldn't touch them, he was a sitting duck for a game over. The clock was ticking and the pressure was mounting. Then a chilling realization struck Siegfried's mind. This was a distraction. Romulus was stalling until the timer hit 0. The madman's laughter echoed loudly. Romulus sneered, claiming the hero's strikes were useless against his kind. But he spoke too soon. Siegfried lunged, triggering heavy strike. "If I take out the master, the rest falls," he roared. Romulus slammed into the stone wall. Tyson Han didn't give him a second to breathe. "Nice parry," Han mocked as his mace shattered the priest's blade, smashing his jaw. Livid Romulus unleashed his spirits. The spectral horde swarmed our hero with lethal intent. But as the fanatic crowed about his victory, something changed. He claimed the Great Calamity's rebirth was inevitable, until a golden flash signaled another level up for the debuff master. He unlocked Flying Spur, a deadly skill that grants absolute control over any weapon he throws. A blue light pierced through the spirits like an arrow, leaving the summoner completely stunned. "Time for your divine judgment," Han declared, locking onto his target, with cold, murderous eyes. The mace crashed into Romulus, forcing him to cough blood as his health bar plummeted instantly. The impact was pure chaos, triggering a massive explosion that completely leveled the villain. With Romulus down, the blood-soaked mace began to hover, surprising even Han with its fluid telekinetic movement. Controlling it felt like second nature. He cursed himself for not using this broken skill sooner. Now, only the orbs remained. Suddenly, a streak of fire slammed into one of the floating targets. That made 3. Gazrin prayed her battered shoulder would hold out just long enough to finish this. But the cultists caught her scent, swarming the mage before she could launch another spell. They seized her wounded shoulder, pinning her down. Gazrin was trapped as the clock ticked down ruthlessly. Under 90 seconds left, suddenly the mace whistled through the air, obliterating the 4th orb in a flash. Before the goons could react, Siegfried stepped in and ended them both instantly. 2 hits, 2 kills. Gazrin sighed in relief as Han arrived, though he noticed her obvious struggle. "I'm sorry, I'm just a burden," she whispered, clutching her bleeding shoulder. "Drop the guilt," Han countered. "You're the only one who can actually finish this mission." She stared at his flying mace, confused. He explained the skill was currently on a long cooldown. The final orb was immune to physical strikes, only magic could crack it. Gazrin hesitated, her confidence wavering. Han snapped her back to reality. There was no time for self-doubt or hesitation. "We don't have the luxury of thinking," he barked. Stealing her resolve, Gazrin prepared her final strike. "Don't blame me if I miss," she yelled. 15 seconds left. The tension was suffocating. Her trembling shoulder ruined her aim. Suddenly, a firm, steady hand rested over hers, guiding her focus. Han was steadying her shot. Their eyes met for a heartbeat, sparking a new wave of determination. Empowered, she unleashed a torrent of flames. 1 second remained. It was now or never. Just before impact, Romulus lunged forward, using his own broken body as a human shield for the orb. They watched in horror as the priest collapsed, begging the monster to drown the world in chaos. Time hit 0. The mission failed. The catastrophic rebirth was now officially underway. The egg splintered, leaking, blinding energy. Han cursed himself for not finishing the priest off earlier. A massive shadow loomed over them. Standing before the duo was a gargantuan ivory serpent. A hidden quest triggered Slay the Reincarnated Python. The stakes just went through the roof. The lightning serpent roared, its sheer presence vibrating through their very souls. It was colossal. Han finally realized the depth of the cult's insanity. They actually brought this disaster back. They truly summoned the disaster. Wait, something about its size seemed off. Myths described it as mountain-sized, but this version was significantly smaller than the ancient legends. It was still huge, but not world-ending. This unknown beast was a mere shadow of its ancestor. This wasn't the level 500 monster that leveled Sohoka 30 years ago. It was only level 70, Gazrin realized. Destroying 4 orbs had severely nerfed the beast. It was weakened, yet still terrifying. Gazrin's first instinct was to run for their lives, but Han just grinned. This was a rare opportunity. "Stay back," he promised. "I'll save you." He expected her to bolt, leaving him all the loot. Instead, she chugged a potion. She tossed him a basic light resistance brew, apologizing that it was her only supply. Caught off guard by her grit, the mage insisted they face this nightmare as one. Vowing this would be a legendary encounter, she swore to shield the young warrior. Taesung Han accepted the backup, but warned her life was in her own hands. "If the serpent claims, you don't blame me." Suddenly, the massive reptile lunged forward. He narrowly evaded the strike while downing his potion, then pivoted to face the beast. With his light resistance peaking, he shouted for his partner to track the monster's speed. The beast looped back for another lethal snap, but the protagonist danced out of reach. Scaling a nearby pillar for the tactical advantage, the debuff master prepared his trap. He deployed the Zone of Mortality, watching the beast's legendary defense crumble into nothing. Siegfried unleashed his heavy strike, slamming his mace into the scales 3 times straight. The monster hissed, lashing out with its colossal tail in a desperate bone-crushing counter. Leaping high to escape a sudden system alert froze his blood mid-air. Danger was imminent. The Calamity was charging its ultimate breath, and he was squarely in the kill zone. The elemental mage didn't hesitate, blasting the monster's jaw with fire to disrupt the beam. The blast veered off target, missing our hero by inches. Fate had granted him mercy. Cheating death against the white serpent's fury, the protagonist crashed back to the floor. The mage rushed to his side, but Taesung Han brushed off the narrow escape. A minor head injury, he claimed, though the surrounding devastation told a far deadlier story. Seeing the crater, he realized this incomplete boss still packed world-ending levels of power. Gazon warned they must finish this now before the next breath levels the entire temple. The serpent wasn't done yet, conjuring a lethal electric barrier to stop their advance. The shield boosted its defense massively, promising a paralyzing shock to anyone who dared touch. Watching the giant drain its mana for attacks then hide behind a wall felt pathetic. For a creature of that size, the hero found its hit-and-run tactics completely cowardly. With magic and melee both blocked, his partner looked to him for a miracle play. Siegfried just smirked, casting the Zone of Frailty to drain the beast's very life force. It was time for the Nerfing King to show this boss true despair. No escape. Since Erdler 2, the python shrieked as its endurance evaporated, falling into a blind, bloodlusted killing rage. It shattered its own shield in fury, exactly as the debuff master had planned. Even with reinforced scales, the fixed damage of his skills was tearing it apart. The broken barrier left the monster drained and vulnerable, its health bar flashing critical red. Victory was finally within reach. Without hesitation, the protagonist charged into the fray. The enraged beast summoned lightning from the heavens, turning the battlefield into a thunderstorm. Siegfried danced through the bolts before soaring upward, bringing his mace down like a meteor. But the snake had one last trick, a lightning-fast tail strike aimed right at his back. Reflexes kicking in, he triggered speed regulation, forcing the world to move in slow motion. With the python frozen in time, the hero stood tall. Fate was now sealed. Activating Supreme Contempt, he prepared to punish the boss for its arrogance with bonus damage. The gap in levels didn't matter now. He delivered the final crushing execution blow. The Calamity's reincarnation finally fell, signaling the end of an epic main quest line. With the python dead, the Ozrak cult's dark scheme crumbled into the temple dust. He hit level 46 and grabbed his loot, yet felt robbed of a bigger jump. Level 200 felt light years away, but the grind had only just begun. Siegfried eagerly anticipated his hard-earned loot as the elemental mage slowly approached him. Ghost Rin stood there speechless at his impossible win, though he humbly claimed he couldn't have pulled it off without her support. Deep down, she knew he was lying. This monster was light work for him. Seeing a level 45 player pull off such a stunt was insane, even with her debuffs helping out. Normally, a level 70 raid team was needed for a python like this. Siegfried suddenly snapped her back to reality. It was finally time to check their rewards, but our hero had an urgent priority first. He insisted on a pressing matter first. Ghost Rin braced herself, expecting another god-tier secret skill revelation. Instead, he deadpanned and asked for rubber gloves. An annoyed Siegfried didn't want to get his hands dirty. He explained that proper butchering was the only way to get the best loot, which she surprisingly agreed with. The duo began harvesting everything: blood scales, meat, and those massive fangs. It was a total loot fest. Ghost Rin couldn't believe the haul. Giant bosses really were the ultimate gold mines in this game. However, she noticed her partner's expression darkening. Siegfried wasn't exactly jumping for joy over the results. Getting basic loot from a hidden dungeon boss felt like a total slap in the face to him. Only one drop grabbed his attention, a high-tier monster core, a rare consumable pulsing with power. It was overflowing with pure light energy. Since only one of them could claim this legendary prize, he politely reminded the mage that he basically carried the entire fight against the massive python. She tilted her head as he claimed he only wanted a small fraction of the total haul. He offered her every single item they harvested, provided he could walk away with that monster core. He acted like it was worthless junk. After a tense silence, the mage struggled to hold back her laughter. Her giggling definitely weirded him out. When he demanded an explanation, she finally let it all out. She found him increasingly fascinating, and to his absolute shock told him to keep every single drop. Just like their first run together, her only goal was the massive experience points, not the physical gold. This was no different. For her, the massive level boost from this insane adventure was the real prize. Surviving this ordeal was rewarding enough. She promised to cherish this wild memory for a long time. With her blessing, our confused protagonist decided to take the deal and pocket the entire mountain of loot. He was down for the free stuff, but a major logistical nightmare quickly stopped him in his tracks. The loot was way too massive for his inventory slots. Just as he considered splitting it after all, the legendary Ham Ham appeared. The little guy claimed it was finally his time to shine. Siegfried thought the hamster was just being greedy, which made the spirit look at him like a total idiot. Correcting his master, the hamster clapped its tiny paws and summoned a mysterious, shimmering piece of cloth. Siegfried wasn't impressed until the Great Spirit unveiled his newest overpowered ability, the Infinity Bundle. His master immediately snatched him up, calling the skill's appearance gross, but then he saw the truth. The fabric contained a swirling, infinite starry night sky, a direct gateway to the elemental world of absolute nothingness. It offered infinite storage that defied all game logic. Our hero stood there completely floored by the discovery. This Infinity Bundle was a godsend, fixing the inventory space issues that every pro player absolutely hated. Siegfried suddenly started acting like a fanboy, but Ham Ham hadn't forgotten the earlier insults so easily. He promised a lifetime supply of treats to apologize. Suddenly, a heavy, ominous presence loomed over them. A mysterious voice praised their victory, catching both the debuff master and the mage completely off guard. Unable to sense the intruder's level, Siegfried drew his blade and demanded the stranger show his face. The man stepped forward, claiming he meant no harm, but Siegfried froze the moment he saw the face. He breathed a sigh of relief, realizing it was just the injured guard they had saved earlier that day. The guard burst into laughter. His epic entrance was ruined because he forgot to change his appearance back. He formally greeted the debuff master, but his next words sent a chill down the hero's spine. The stranger used Siegfried's secret real-world name. The hero lunged forward, his heart racing with pure adrenaline. He demanded the truth, and the man finally spoke. His name was Wu Jin Chong. Fury bubbled within our hero because this wasn't the deal, prompting Wu Jin-chan to call out his reckless impatience. The shifter then dropped a truth bomb about why the system kept his identity shrouded in mystery. A massive aura erupted, shoving the debuff master back as he realized the truth about high-tier shifters. They can cloak their stats from lower-level players. Seeing this, Tae-sung-han confronted the max-level powerhouse. He demanded to know why he used a fake persona when such flexes were useless against a newbie. Wu Jin-chan actually apologized, admitting he might have moved a bit too fast with his little games. The shifter confessed he was simply captivated by the sheer mystery surrounding our main character. Despite playing the weakling card, Jin-chan knew this guy was anything but your average low-level scrub. He was Master Dias's only apprentice, and the shifter warned him that lying wouldn't work anymore. Stunned that his cover was blown, our hero froze, until Jin-chan offered a quick reassurance. He promised the secret was safe, and teased a future call, inviting him to Sinsadong for real answers. Seeking the truth, head to Sinsadong. Then the shifter apologized to the elemental mage for killing the vibe. She gave him the cold shoulder with a poker face, forcing Jin-chan to flash an awkward grin. He dipped after wishing them a nice date, leaving our protagonist absolutely fuming at the audacity. Panic set in as he realized a high-tier predator now had his sights locked onto him. Anger turned to pure anxiety since the debuff master couldn't trust a single word from that guy. If he knew the secret, who else did? A terrifying thought began to take root. Was Genesis watching his every move, just as he spiraled toward a total mental breakdown? Smack, his teammate snapped him back to reality. The elemental mage looked at him completely unbothered by the drama. Ghost Ran made it clear she didn't care about the shifter's cryptic nonsense at all. No cameras, no leaks. She softly assured him that his privacy was safe with her. His nightmare wouldn't happen today. Even Ham jumped in to back up his master's confidence. He promised to be his shield if things went south, finally letting the hero breathe a sigh of relief. With a faint smile returning to his face, he thanked his loyal comrades for having his back. Leaving the hidden dungeon behind, our hero said his goodbyes and split from the group. While she stayed to grind some experience in the ruins, our protagonist decided to log off entirely. Even with the pep talk, the fear of his real-world identity being leaked kept him on edge. Exhausted and confused, Tae-sung-han didn't know his next move. 3 days later, the phone finally rang. It was Jin-chan. The instructions were simple: Club Heaven, midnight Sinsadong. Soon, the neon lights of Gangnam were calling. Our hero questioned the sanity of this top-tier player. Who holds a serious meeting in a loud nightclub? It hit him then. It had been ages since he'd seen the city's nightlife this late. While others were out partying, he'd been grinding levels. Finally, he reached the designated spot. Anxiety spiked as he approached. Would the bouncer even let a guy like him inside? Never having set foot in a club, his fears were confirmed when the bouncer blocked him for his cheap clothes. Trying to play it cool, he explained he was just there for a quick meeting, but the bouncer wasn't buying it. The guard just got more irritated. Suddenly, a random passerby started talking smack. He joked about seeing a hoodie in heaven, while his buddy whispered that the kid could hear them. The jerk didn't care, flipping the bird and shooing our hero away like he was nothing. Just as his blood started to boil, a familiar face appeared. It was the high-level monster himself. He immediately roasted our hero's fit, laughing that this was probably the best gear he owned. The bouncer quickly apologized, claiming he had no idea the kid was a guest of the VIP. Jin-chan joked about his friend's lack of clubbing experience, saying he'd have thrashed the bouncer in his shoes. Our hero just looked annoyed, but the bully from earlier was absolutely paralyzed with shock. He realized too late that the kid he just disrespected was tight with the legendary Wu Jin-chan. With one cold look from the star, the bully knew he was permanently cancelled in Sinsadong while the bass dropped. Heaven Club was pulsing with life, yet the VIP room was wrapped in an eerie, heavy silence. Wu Jin-chen slid over bottles of Armand de Brignac and Dom Perignon like they were water. Our low-level hero wasn't impressed, stating he wasn't there for the expensive booze or the vibes. The shapeshifter joked he was just there for the dance floor, making the MC visibly irritated. He told him to drop the act. Wu Jin-chen smirked and offered a playful apology. Tae-sung-han demanded a real intro and the truth behind this meeting. The powerhouse finally agreed. Since he'd crashed the hero's date, he figured he owed him. He revealed he was a guardian. That face he wore, it belonged to a comrade who died during a brutal laboratory escape. The hero was disgusted that Wu Jin-chen was wearing a dead man's identity as a mask. He called the act unforgivable, but the shapeshifter didn't show a single ounce of regret. This meeting was destiny. Taesung realized it was all because of his tie to Daya. Wu Jin-chen admitted he wanted to test the raw power of another elite hidden class. The hero's mind raced. He realized the man before him held a rank just as legendary. He assumed the high-level player used his hidden class skills to dig up his personal secrets. Wrong. Wu Jin-chen revealed he simply used massive piles of cash to buy the info. Taesung was floored. The mogul promised he wouldn't leak the hero's secrets to anyone else. Thanks to his real-world status, he was the only soul privy to the hero's true identity. He confessed his fear of Genesis, noting they were still blind to the MC and Daya. Since the mogul knew everything, the debuff master demanded to know his rival's secret class. But Wu Jinchen just laughed, calling him too weak to handle the truth just yet. He wanted the hero to grind harder. Only then would he reveal the full dark picture. He had to prove he was Daya's true successor. Later, the forest spirit greeted her master. Tae Sung-han asked his pet if she'd caused any chaos while he was gone. She shook her head, asking if he'd finished his business in the boring human world. He couldn't give a straight answer since the shapeshifter vanished without spilling any real tea. He questioned the man's true goal. As he pondered, the spirit asked why they were here. She wondered why a simple guy like him was visiting such a trashy, indecent place. She teased him about having secret, flashy desires, but the MC quickly shut that down. This was Danjuri, the infamous city of sins, where pleasure is the only currency. It was a haven for gambling and vice, but the debuff master only wanted the black market. Tae Sung-han planned a quick gear swap on the black market before heading back out. The spirit felt let down, but then the MC spotted two men in familiar uniforms. Genesis Guild. He watched as the two thugs started abusing their status for no reason. They were harassing a random guy, acting like the typical trash they were. He wanted to swing, but he held back. His spirit called him a wimp, but the player had a plan. He explained that picking a fight now was a waste of time. He'd handle them later. Their business came first. Meanwhile, the Genesis bullies cornered an old man for his loot. They demanded a peek at his treasures, acting like they owned the damn street. When the old man stayed silent, the lead bully's temper started to flare up. His friend worried the old man was a hidden boss since their insight skill failed. The bully mocked his friend's nerves, calling him a coward for being so paranoid. High level or not, anyone who messed with them was messing with the entire guild. He bragged that no one would dare step in because their power was absolute here. He poked the old man, laughing that his silence was just pure, unadulterated terror. Suddenly, bam, the MC's fist connected, sending the bully flying through the air like a rag doll. Tae Sung-han barked at them to drop the act. Their weak intimidation tactics didn't scare him at all. A lackey tried name-dropping the Genesis Guild, but that just fueled our hero's burning desire to crush them. It was the perfect excuse. Now he had zero reasons to show these clowns any mercy. He mocked them as nobodies without their guild's backing, while Ham Ham roasted him for staying to fight. Tae-sung blamed the hamster for his rage, while the furball claimed he was just helping him vent. Our lead told the elder not to worry about Genesis, but the silence that followed was heavy and cold. He wondered if the man was mute. Meanwhile, Ham Ham panicked about being targeted by the massive guild. Tae-sung wasn't worried. Those cowards would be too humiliated to report their embarrassing loss. With his business done, the hero moved on. The silent elder watched him go with newfound curiosity. They hit the Intervention Hotel's private lounge. Ham Ham was floored by the massive space hidden inside. Despite its modest exterior, the gym was huge. Tae-sung explained it was a high-tier hub for sharpening skills. It was a pricey sanctuary for elites. Then the forest spirit leaped off his shoulder, ready for action. He instantly deployed his legendary infinite bundle. The debuff master teased his overly dramatic and flashy entrance. The spirit defended his theatrics, claiming flashiness was the only thing his single skill had going for it. Our protagonist mocked the showy display. The spirit fired back, insisting on the spotlight for his limited kit. Since it was his only skill, he leaned in. Ham Ham wondered why he bought so many blades. Tae-sung cited tactical convenience. But with level 50 looming, the system pressured him to choose a main. He preferred blunt weapons, but had 5 specialized paths to consider before making a final decision. He summoned a shadow boxer, a training dummy with endless stamina and ironclad defense to test his limits. Testing the shield first, Tae-sung charged. He hammered the dummy with heavy punches and brutal bashes. The power was great, but it felt sluggish. He quickly swapped the shield for a massive greatsword instead. 2 hours passed and Ham Ham was bored. Meanwhile, Tae-sung was deep in the zone, testing everything. He was drained and frustrated. Every weapon had a glaring weakness that kept him from finding a match. Just as he settled on his club, a voice called his efforts useless. The debuff master recognized him. It was the elder he'd rescued. He figured this mysterious man had special access to this elite facility. Was he a guardian or a contact from Wu Jinchen? The elder ignored him, asking why he'd helped. Why risk his life for no profit? Tae-sung demanded answers first, but a thunderous roar silenced him. The elder's shout for the truth was intense. Finally, Tae-sung admitted he didn't help out of pity. The old man reminded him of his own past weakness. He was tired of running from those memories. This raw honesty satisfied the elder. He revealed himself as Shikario, the level 354 weapon master. As a legend of the Stellar Five, he promised to make the debuff master even more powerful. Like with all Goose, Shikario was a master warrior. He'd mastered 18 different weapons to earn his title. Tae-sung realized that beat-up straw hat was a legendary item hiding his identity from high-tier runes. Our hero was losing it with excitement. 2 Stellar 5 legends were now competing to mentor him. He prepared to decline the offer, but Shikario noted it was only natural for a prodigy to already have a master. Instead of an apprenticeship, he offered to help the protagonist choose his ultimate final primary weapon. True guidance doesn't require a title. Shikario's selfless offer left the young fighter stunned by his charisma. The weapon master spoke the absolute truth. Taesung realized this was a golden chance to evolve. Our hero was absolutely hyped. Two legends from the Stellar Five were interested in him. They both wanted him as a student. He prepared to decline, but the elder spoke first. He noted that a talent like Taesung surely had a legendary mentor in his corner already. Instead of a formal contract, he offered to guide him in selecting his ultimate primary weapon. Education isn't just for disciples. Shikario clarified he just wanted to help, not recruit him. The master's charisma was magnetic. Taesung was stunned by how effortlessly he read the room. He realized the master was being genuine. If he accepted this help, his power would skyrocket. He'd brag about being the ultimate weapon, calling a mere student pathetic for even needing gear. Our protagonist expected this Stellar Five legend to finally hand over his ultimate god-tier blade. Instead, the master revealed something jaw-dropping, claiming a single blade could never satisfy a warrior's soul. Shikiro declared that from this moment every single weapon in his class was his to command. He held the mythic Megan Jord, a legendary relic forged in the image of Balak's own belt. This ancient god of war possessed powers that defied the very laws of creation. Gear was tiered across 8 ranks, but the elusive world class remained a myth to most players. This belt was mythic, the peak of power, yet our hero still couldn't wrap his head around it. Shikiro confirmed the impossible once he put it on. This god-tier item belonged to him for eternity. Despite serving another master, the debuff specialist offered a deep bow, showing respect to the legend. Seeing a stranger honor him as a senior warrior genuinely amused the old master's hardened heart. Eager and grateful, our main character reached out to claim the mythical treasure from the master's hands. But he grasped at thin air. Frustration boiled over as the Stellar Five master played him like a fool. Shikiro mocked him like a disobedient puppy, then dropped a truth bomb, right as the hero snapped. Possession isn't mastery. Suddenly, reality hit. Mythic gear always comes with a heavy, dangerous price tag. Following the master, they arrived just as a warrior got leveled, sending the announcer into a frenzy. Welcome to the Colosseum of Dondre. The realization hit. The old man was throwing him into the pit. Shikiro insisted this blood-soaked arena was the perfect playground to test his mettle against endless foes. He argued that slaying humans and humanoids was a far faster path to power than hunting monsters. The logic was sound for weapon mastery, but our protagonist couldn't shake a nagging feeling of doubt. Facing a level 65 champion seemed like a cakewalk, especially when the master handed over a mysterious gift. The gear snapped onto his body, catching both Han and his hamster completely off guard. Han stared in shock at the skimpy, revealing armor, while the old man insisted it was peak fashion. Shoving him toward the arena, the master dropped a bombshell. Only basic attacks were permitted here. Han vowed to seize that mythic belt the second he crushed the level 65 champion. Such arrogance amused the old legend. Walking toward the gate, our hero felt the challenge's weight. He figured the old man was lowballing him, stripping his skills and arming him with a foreign blade. Having survived the Genesis War, Han's combat experience and elite stats were far beyond his current level. After surviving Deus's brutal training regime, he expected this gladiator trial to be a total breeze. Fueled by hype, he planned to blitz the champion and claim his mythical prize in record time. The stadium shook with thunderous applause as the announcer stepped up to introduce the combatants. He introduced our protagonist as Wimpy Man, a name so cringe it sent Han's face turning red. He knew instantly that the Stellar Five legend set him up. Then a mocking voice cut through the air. A humanoid monster sneered, saying Han looked exactly like his pathetic name, before offering him a choice: quick death or agonizing pain. Standing there was Maki, the level 37 mimic known as the Slaughtering Scythe. But Han was on another level, telling the monster he should be the one begging for mercy. Maki lunged like a predator, but Han casually parried, curious about what color blood a mimic bleeds. He prepared to deliver the finishing blow when something went horribly wrong with his mysterious new gear. The debuff armor finished its scan, suddenly surging with high-voltage electricity that fried Han's nerves. As our hero collapsed, the announcer mistakenly credited the mimic's weak attack for the sudden takedown. Han was paralyzed. There was no way that pathetic scythe attack packed that much electrical power. Reality set in this agonizing shock was a cruel hidden feature of his new debuff armor. The armor's true purpose was to nerf the wearer, leaving Maki grinning at his sudden stroke of luck. Mocking the fallen human, the bug-like mimic threw Han's own arrogant question right back in his face. Except this time, the humanoid already knew exactly what color Han's blood was going to be. Just as the beast lunged for the kill, our MC pulled off a clutch dodge at the very last second. The monster scoffed, calling it pure luck, and vowed that its next strike would definitely finish the brat off. Taesung Han simply told the creature to pipe down since he had way too many problems to deal with. As he charged, the humanoid tanked the hit and mocked him, claiming weak attacks would never leave a scratch. It blasted the protagonist back, but thanks to that heavy armor, his irritation was actually stronger than the pain. Getting tagged by a mimic was a wake-up call, making him question the legendary NPC's true motives. This nerfed gear had to be a lesson, not just a handicap. Right then, our hero decided to switch gears. He dug his heels into the dirt and declared it was time to take things back to the basics. Even his hamster roasted him, pointing out how he'd usually dodge those mid-tier attacks with zero effort. Shakru acted worried, but the spirit secretly admitted he just wanted to watch his master struggle in the trenches. The Weaponmeister watched their chaotic dynamic, knowing this debuff armor was the ultimate trial for any warrior. To truly master a blade, one must understand its soul, forcing our protagonist to connect with his weapon's nature. Stripped of his peak stats, Shakru was dying to see how this top-tier player would survive as the underdog. He wanted to see how he'd handle the heat now that the tables were turned. Suddenly, the crowd gasped. Blood sprayed across the floor as the debuff master expertly swung his blade, severing the monster's left arm instantly. The mimic froze in pure shock before letting out a bone-chilling shriek of agony that echoed through the arena. While the beast recoiled, Han remarked that handling this massive slab of steel was way tougher than he anticipated. He looked the creature in the eye and promised that its other arm was coming off next. Game on. The mimic lost it, descending into a blind rage as everyone realized our hero had officially snatched the momentum. After the brutal dismemberment, Han endured a relentless barrage, leaving the old master absolutely floored by his performance. He was speechless, watching a mere rookie unlock the giant sword's deepest secrets in such a ridiculously short time. Even though the heavy handicap made his weapon slow, he was making every single movement count. Being nerfed against a speedster was a nightmare, but our swordsman finally cracked the code to victory. He used the massive blade as a literal wall, repositioning himself to expose the mimic's fatal weak spots. This wasn't something you learn from a textbook. It was pure survival instinct and a savage will to win. The Weaponmeister realized right then that this kid actually had the juice to surpass him one day. The mimic was visibly tilted by this strat, and Han finally realized the old man's master plan all along. This gear was meant to reveal the weapon's true potential, a detail he had almost missed in the heat. Since he was used to being the underdog, he'd developed a sharp instinct for using everything to his advantage. He played the long game until the mantis lunged for a finisher, thinking it finally had him cornered. He swerved at the last millisecond, trapping the beast's claw. Then the debuff master remembered his deadly promise. He had called his shot on that second arm, and with one clean stroke, he sliced it right off. The scythe-wielding horror let out one final pathetic wail before collapsing onto the blood-stained dirt, totally defeated. The announcer screamed that Wimpy Man was the winner, and the entire stadium erupted in massive cheers. In the shadows, a mysterious figure asked his goons if this was the guy who had previously wrecked them. The Genesis lackey confirmed it, and the boss demanded to know if the beatdown had really been that one-sided. The bully tried to make excuses but caught a boot to the gut instead, as his boss began venting. He ranted about how pathetic they were. Just then, a heavy hitter from the City of Pleasure appeared. Cholgi Choi of the Genesis Guild squinted, realizing he'd seen this guy before and demanded to know his name. The name Siegfried rang out, and the boss noted he once knew someone who looked exactly like him. The goon pointed out the man he saved earlier and begged for a plan to take them down. Choi was ready to throw hands, but the guy in the red coat warned that wouldn't be easy. The old man with him was the legendary Weaponmeister himself, a fact the red-coated man quickly confirmed. He was lurking in the crowd, leaving the boss wondering why such a legend would be at the Colosseum. He knew the Meister only chased the rarest loot, meaning something insane was about to drop nearby. The VIP box was buzzing with greedy excitement. A legendary treasure was finally up for grabs in the Colosseum. Chulgi Choi recalled Red One's warning, knowing that taking out the old monster was a suicidal yet possible mission. No one could ever hope to best a healthy shock hero, but this man was a mere shadow of his former self. The crowd's bloodlust surged into a roar as the battle in the pit reached a violent fever pitch. The reigning king Ho Chul mocked his challenger, claiming it was a divine blessing just to stand in his presence. That blessing was actually a death sentence, as the champion vowed his opponent would leave the arena in a casket. Ho Chul lunged with lethal intent, but Tai Sun Han danced through the strikes like a flickering ghost. Having mastered the sweet science of boxing, his entire style was built on crushing counterattacks. A perfectly timed hook exploded against the champion's jaw, sending his brain rattling against his skull. The king hit the dirt instantly, ending his undefeated streak and crowning our hero as the new arena god. Fans couldn't stop raving about the new champion's tactical genius and his insane mastery of diverse weaponry. The announcer rushed the stage, showering the rookie with praise for conquering the Colosseum in just 1 week. But when pressed for his victory speech, Siegfried dropped a bombshell. He was quitting the arena for good. Later, at the Intervention Hotel, the youth strapped on his hard-earned prize, the legendary mythical belt. Meganjord glowed as it fused to the protagonist's waist, perfectly adjusting its size with ancient magic. Staring at his reflection, he finally understood why whales blow a fortune on top-tier mythical drip. The old master chuckled, noticing the kid was vibrating with pure joy after equipping the artifact. Although the blacksmith apologized for missing the crowning ceremony, he couldn't help but mock the boy's instant retirement. Our hero shrugged it off as an easy grind, making the old man explode into fits of nostalgic laughter. The elder bragged that back in his day, becoming the Colosseum champion was a true descent into hell. He confirmed the youth's suspicions, revealing he had started his blood-soaked journey a full century ago. As a former legendary gladiator, the old man admitted his only motive back then was cold, hard profit. He claimed that in his era, the warriors were built different, and every clash was a struggle for survival. Siegfried realized this legendary warrior was just like the boomers back home, obsessed with the good old days. When asked if the arena was his reason for returning, the master smith revealed a much darker purpose. Without another word, he beckoned the young warrior to follow him toward the city's desolate outskirts. They soon reached the mouth of the forgotten mines of Dandagiri, a cursed place unknown to the protagonist. As Siegfried questioned their arrival, the elder asked if he knew of the 3 legendary ateliers. The debuff master nodded immediately. Every player knew those names were synonymous with ultimate power. The old man leaned in, asking if he'd ever heard of the secret department known as Bamarlian. Tae Sung Han's eyes widened as he realized he was talking about the birthplace of death from the Stellar Five. This was the Forbidden Forge, where the continent's most terrifying and god-tier weapons were birthed. The elder explained that within that dark sanctuary, one blacksmith stood above all others. A man named Herbert, whose unholy obsession with lethal craftsmanship was the stuff of nightmares. Rumor said Herbert learned to paint just to capture the exact moment his blades claimed a soul. Seeking to forge his ultimate masterpiece, Herbert vanished on a final journey to create a weapon of total destruction. Shakiro revealed that a crucial map fragment leading to this forbidden masterpiece was hidden within these mines. However, the original map had been severed in 2 and scattered to the furthest corners of the world. With the other half's location a total mystery, Siegfried realized why the master had been lurking in the shadows. The old man had spent years scouring the black market just to find this single lead. It was the same dark path that had led to their first meeting, leaving the youth feeling slightly outclassed. He felt a surge of embarrassment, realizing his current power was nothing compared to the master's grand vision. The weapon master explained that while Siegfried was busy fighting, he had finally pinpointed the map's exact coordinates. Suddenly, the tunnel walls groaned and expanded as the protagonist sensed a massive looming threat. A monstrous claw erupted from the shadows as a horde of beasts began to spawn from the darkness. Our duo finally stepped into the dark dungeon depths where the old-timer casually brushed off the threat level as light. But the rookie sensed danger everywhere, demanding to know why he wasn't warned about a full-scale dungeon raid. The young challenger was sweating, admitting his current limit was soloing just a single level 150 beast. Even facing Chimera 0154, a terrifying multi-species cyborg, the veteran remained completely chill and unshaken. He vowed to push the boy's potential to the absolute breaking point, ignoring the frantic warnings about the mechanical beast. As the monster lunged, the master declared it was time to make up for stalling the kid's progress all week. After wasting time in the arena, the elder ended the Chimera's life with a single god-tier sword slash. Watching his X-bar explode, the hero finally realized he was being hard-carried by a literal combat genius. The veteran took the point, smirked at the protagonist, and challenged him to keep up with his insane pace. He became a whirlwind of steel, carving through wave after wave of those metallic abominations like they were paper. The rookie stood there, jaw dropped, his heart racing as he instantly gained 2 levels from the sheer carnage. This grind was better than any paid pro boost, but suddenly Siegfried felt a wave of massive regret hit him. He'd left his hamster behind and missed out on epic loot drops even as he officially hit level 50. A legendary new skill unlocked proof of existence. Now any weakened foe would face his devastatingly amplified damage. It was a game changer. This buff gave him the lethal edge needed to take down high-level monsters way above his rank. Itching for a test drive, he locked onto a tiny, pathetic creature nearby to see his new power in action. Suddenly, the runt transformed. Siegfried's eyes widened as the rare Chimera 007 revealed its true terrifying form. This rare shapeshifter uses a weak disguise as bait, luring unsuspecting prey right into its deadly hidden trap. Before it could strike, the weapon master's blades flashed instantly, dicing the monster into 100 bloody pieces. He warned that trusting your eyes alone leads to death advice. The rookie swallowed whole, realizing his own massive inexperience. With the area cleared, the veteran wiped his blade and checked in on the kid's progress during the slaughter. After hearing about the new skill and massive EXP gains, the old man decided it was finally treasure hunting time. But the youth hesitated, a burning question on his mind that he just couldn't keep to himself any longer. Rumors said the master wielded 18 mythical weapons, so why was he using such a basic, ordinary blade? He was stunned to find out the veteran had gifted all those legendary god-tier weapons to his former disciples. The master had no clue where they were now. He'd only trained them to cure his own soul-crushing loneliness. Glancing at his new belt, the hero realized the old man only bestowed top-tier gear upon his worthy students. It made no sense. If he didn't care for weapons anymore, why hunt for the ultimate legendary blade now? He wondered if the swordsman planned to hand it over to him, a thought that left him completely speechless. The master laughed off his confusion, explaining that he hunts treasures purely for the thrill, not the loot itself. For him, the adrenaline of the adventure far outweighed the actual reward, a mindset the hero struggled to comprehend. It was all about the satisfaction of the hunt. They pressed on deeper into the silent, echoing dungeon corridors. They finally halted before a massive, imposing door, marked with a chilling, mysterious symbol of the letter M. This was the birthplace of death, where the final clue to the mad blacksmith's ultimate weapon lay hidden away. But something felt off. The lack of any visible guards or traps before such a huge door was suspicious. Suspecting a lethal trap inside, he turned to the master for guidance, only to see the old man hacking up blood. Panicked, the hero rushed to his side, but the veteran waved him off, insisting that everything was just fine. He claimed it was just a lingering years-old illness acting up again, though the sight left the hero uneasy. He remembered the old man's constant coughing in the real world, then a shadowy figure suddenly emerged from the darkness. The stranger mocked the rumor of the legendary NPC's death being true, sending a chill down the hero's spine. He insolently thanked our duo for clearing out the monsters and making his path a total cakewalk. It was Cholji Choi, the infamous snake from the Genesis Guild, and he looked ready for a fight. He identified the master as a Stellar 5 legend, and recognized Siegfried as the reigning champion of the Colosseum. Choi sneered, mentioning Siegfried's sudden retirement, and how he'd previously humiliated his guild's weaker members in battle. He suspected Choi was seeking revenge, but the Genesis hunter laughed, admitting he didn't give a damn about his subordinates. The debuff master clarified immediately this was their very first time meeting face to face. The bully claimed they were equals, but the hero saw right through his pathetic act. He was a snake, a traitor who looted Beamer's gold and torched their hideout while fleeing. This corrupt hunter forced others into his filth. Seeing how despicable he was, Tai-sun Han knew this clown wasn't the threat. He had to watch the red figure. Siegfried felt a chill. The faceless mercenary was cracked and dangerously strong. He'd gone completely undetected. Siegfried admitted he was totally outclassed by this monster. Stalling for time was his only play until the old man recovered his strength. He questioned Cholji Choi about his guild's involvement, but the man stayed silent. Siegfried mocked him, saying Genesis only sends washouts to such trash-tier locations. The guild doesn't care if you rot, he spat. The truth stung like a blade. The hunter snapped. Rage boiled as a projectile whistled past the hero's ear, narrowly missing. Before he could blink, the villain closed the gap and landed a devastating mana punch. The hero smashed into a wall, making the old man fear the absolute worst. But the mercenary knew better. The kid was just baiting him to buy precious seconds. Cholji Choi ignored everything, obsessed with slaying the protagonist with his own two hands. The mercenary stepped back, letting the boss handle it while he guarded the old man. The hero exhaled. The villain's short fuse had actually saved him from a total disaster. He assumed the red merc was only in it for the cash, not loyalty. If he could take down the boss, he'd just bribe the merc to survive. Snap back to reality. The enemy charged with a mana fist aimed at his skull. He rolled away perfectly. The brute grabbed a spear and swung with lethal speed. The hero ducked the blow. Cholgi growled that he truly earned his Colosseum title. His evasion was top tier, but the hero was already planning his next move. He analyzed the foe, a spearmaster who dominated the field with massive sweeping strikes. By coating the tip in mana, every swing was deadly. Still, the hero felt confident. Summoning a legendary tool, the hero used Quick Draw to launch a sudden heavy assault. The villain froze. The debuff master was pulling weapons from thin air like a god. His damage output was insane, far outclassing any normal level 50 hunter. Cholgi lunged again, but the youth blocked with a heavy shield, leaving him baffled. Then, using the belt's power, he instantly swapped his defense for a crushing, blunt weapon. It was a flawless cycle. Quick Draw let him toggle weapons to keep the pressure on. Cholgi was too slow for the barrage of steel appearing at light speed. As the hero gripped a greatsword, the villain realized he'd been hiding his true power. One final cinematic slash ended it. The villain fell, leaving the old man in shock. He'd mastered the belt on his first try, overwhelming his foe with pure speed. Everyone watching knew this young man would eventually surpass every legend here. The mercenary smirked at the mentor. Your student is the real deal. Quite a thrill. The veteran threatened him, but the one in red didn't even flinch at the words. Your threats are empty, he countered. He could end everyone in this room instantly. The shadow asked why the old man lacked killing intent for Herbert's legendary weapon. Cutting to the chase, he demanded the second piece of the map right now. The elder had no choice but to spill the location, but he wasn't giving it up without a condition. Meanwhile, the hero sheathed his blade, reflecting on the insane potential of the belt. It felt alien now, but he knew this power would eventually make him unstoppable. Just when it looked like it was over, the toxic hunter spat out a final insult. He shrieked that the debuff master was a dirty cheater, refusing to accept he'd been trashed by a lower level. Our hero stood frozen in shock. This guy was supposed to be fodder, so why was he still standing? Losing his mind, Chulji Choi barked at the mercenary to execute both the champion and the elder. The warrior in red just scoffed, mocking the coward for running to him the second he tasted defeat. Everyone watched in disbelief as the mercenary flat out refused, but the spearman wasn't backing down. He screamed for obedience, throwing his wealth in the man's face, but the sellsword just laughed. Cash meant nothing compared to Herbert's legendary weapon. He'd only taken the job as a cover. He was simply using the Genesis name for his own twisted agenda, leaving Chulgi Choi speechless. Choi threatened that Genesis would become his sworn enemy, but the man in red didn't flinch. Once he secured the map, he was ghosting. Besides, Genesis had already abandoned Choi like trash. Panic flooded Chulji Choi as he struggled to find words, eventually spiraling into a pathetic tantrum. The realization hit that he was being exiled to the City of Pleasures, and he couldn't handle it. He wailed that the place was a dead end, but the man in the chair remained ice cold. They offered him a golden parachute to rot in luxury, yet Choi demanded the respect his money bought. But the truth came out. Every cent he used to join the guild was stolen from Beamer. The bully tried to stutter out an excuse, but his lies were crumbling faster than his reputation. He should have stayed loyal to his original guild. Betrayal always comes with a devastating price tag. Back in the present, rage boiled in the hunter's heart as he screamed that he wasn't a cast-off. Claiming he was above such a fate, he slammed his spear down, flooding the cave with chaotic mana. Siegfried's heart raced. This maniac had truly snapped and was trying to bury them all alive. The hunter lunged with a killing blow, but our hero's reflexes were sharp, dodging by a hair's breadth. Without missing a beat, Siegfried went on the offensive, charging straight into the bully's face. A brutal strike connected, sending the spear spinning away as the hunter's world turned upside down. To our hero, this man was just a bottom-tier traitor. It was time for some poetic justice. He'd make the snake choke on his own medicine, finishing the job with the traitor's own steel. Channeling his focus, the protagonist activated his skill, Flying Spur, with lethal precision. The spear whistled through the air, skewering the hunter and pinning him against the massive dungeon gates. The traitor's story ended right there. As the gates shattered, the final secret was finally revealed. A system alert chimed, dungeon cleared. The long-awaited victory was finally within his grasp. The boss room stood unveiled, and right at the center sat the glittering treasure chest. Taesung Han knew it. The map to the ultimate masterpiece was waiting inside that box. But the mercenary wasn't moving. He declared the map was his, and their goals finally collided. The elder tried to keep the peace, claiming the legal rights to the artifact were his alone. Shakuro's eyes widened. That red robe. This was the legendary Crimson Cardinal of the Red Hood. The Cardinal was impressed. Not many could recognize him, let alone a member of the Stellar Five. This was no ordinary fighter. He was a high-ranking inquisitor who had recently reached master rank. The realization was chilling. This was the same dark cult that employed the deranged Python researcher. The Crimson Cardinal grinned. The debuff master was lucky to still be breathing today. He was only walking away because of a deal. Siegfried demanded to know what had been sacrificed. Shakuro's voice was heavy. He'd traded the priceless treasure just to keep them from being slaughtered. It was a bitter pill. A dying man and a rookie stood no chance against such power. Frustration boiled over as the protagonist felt the crushing weight of his own total helplessness. The Cardinal called life the ultimate prize, before demanding the location of the map's second half. The old man looked him in the eye and stood his ground. He truly had no more answers. The elder claimed he could hunt down its coordinates, piquing the interest of the man in crimson. According to the old master, Herbert had woven a complex locating spell into the map designed to make the fragments pinpoint the remaining piece's location. Skeptical, the Crimson Cardinal asked if he was truly capable, before handing over the initial map fragment with a cold, impatient stare. The Cardinal's patience was wearing razor thin. He warned the elder that any attempt at deception would be his very last mistake. Without a word, the Stellar Five legend began unraveling the magic, leaving our protagonist completely blindsided by the sudden development. It was a high-tier pursuit spell. The villains scoffed at how absurdly extra those blacksmiths were for enchanting such a small map fragment. With the ritual complete, the coordinates of the final piece were finally being revealed. But then, the unthinkable happened. The map fragment began to pulse, with energy pointing straight at our hero. He was the one carrying the second piece. As the system urged him to merge the two halves, everyone in the room was left frozen in absolute disbelief. Rewind 18 months. The rest of the party was fuming over their latest mediocre haul. Chulji Choi ranted about how their blood and sweat had only earned them pathetic rewards while his teammates agreed. Fed up with the grind, the hot-headed player told the guildmaster that these small-time missions were a total joke. He demanded they skip these bottom-tier raids, forcing our protagonist to offer a humble apology. In the middle of the junk, our hero noticed a tattered scrap of map and asked Jin Woo about it. She just brushed it off as garbage, telling him to toss it immediately since it was completely worthless. Yet he sensed a faint hum of mana from the paper. Trusting his gut, he decided to keep it. Back in the present, the realization hit him. He had forgotten that legendary map was sitting in his inventory. The elder demanded answers for this shocker, so the young warrior had to explain his side of things. He confessed he'd looted it from some bandits, having absolutely no clue that he was holding a legendary artifact. Seeing this, the Crimson Cardinal snapped. Convinced he was being played, he unleashed a lethal strike at them both. The elder managed to block the blow, but our hero wasn't as lucky. He felt a wave of pure agony. The debuff master was sent crashing into the wall. Shakiro begged the red-clad monster to chill and reconsider the situation. But the Cardinal wasn't hearing it. He was convinced the old man was just spinning lies to save himself. He spat that negotiating with them was a huge mistake. Then his murderous intent truly flared up. Suddenly, he triggered his barrier of blood. Shakiro realized then that the Cardinal never intended for them to leave alive. The villain laughed, claiming he was just doing what was necessary. To him, Shakiro was just a relic past his prime. And the protagonist, he was a rising star, with enough raw potential to eventually crush the Cardinal's entire cult. It was better to kill him now. But the swordsman countered, declaring the Cardinal would be the one falling. He sliced through the magic before it could freeze our hero, leaving the villain completely stunned by his speed. Shakiro's blade carved through the solidified blood like butter. In an eye blink, the old master closed the gap. He unleashed a flurry of devastating slashes. The Cardinal realized he would have been dead meat without his armor. Even in his condition, Shakiro proved he was still a legend. The old man then gave him an ultimatum. He told the Cardinal he still had one chance to live. He would let him escape if he dropped the barrier. Utterly annoyed, the villain told the elder not to get cocky just because of one lucky surprise attack. He claimed that mere luck meant nothing, as he hadn't even begun to reveal the true depth of his strength. Unfazed, the elder summoned his massive weapon box and drew every single blade at the exact same time. Using his mastery of magic, he commanded the entire arsenal, affirming that he too was ready to get serious. The Crimson Cardinal mocked his mana control, insisting that ordinary weapons wouldn't be enough to claim a victory here. The weapon master stood his ground, swearing these blades would be his foe's end, before diving headfirst into the crimson tide. With a lightning-fast strike, he cleaved the gore apart, while Shakiro relentlessly hunted for an opening. As the onslaught intensified, the Crimson Cardinal retreated into a dense sphere of blood to tank the damage. Their collision was pure insanity, unleashing a shockwave that reduced the very earth to rubble. The sheer perfection in every swing was terrifying, radiating an aura of absolute dominance. Watching from the sidelines, our hero was completely floored by the weapon master's god-tier prowess. But the clock was ticking, and he knew the old man would eventually hit a wall in this war of attrition. Mocking his opponent's basic gear, the Crimson Cardinal sneered with twisted pity. He claimed the fight would have ended instantly if the master hadn't gifted his legendary relics to his pupils. Shakiro, however, wasn't bothered by the Cardinal's arrogant taunts. The villain roared that the master's soft heart would be his grave, unleashing the lethal bloody guillotine. The old man raised his blades to parry, but the sheer force caused the steel to fracture and moan. The executioner's strike slammed into the dirt, yet the Cardinal realized his blade had tasted no flesh. Having dodged by a hair's breadth, the master countered instantly, slamming a standard blade right into the villain's jaw. Despite the blood, the master smiled, declaring that a loving nature is the ultimate catalyst for change. Pointing his remaining steel at the monster, he revealed he still had a massive arsenal in reserve. The Cardinal just laughed, vowing to grind every single one of those toys into dust along with their owner. The air crackled as both warriors went all out, a desperate struggle for dominance, as the red mist swirled. One by one, Shakiro's weapons were shattered until only a single untouched blade remained. As his current sword snapped, the Crimson Cardinal lunged, smelling blood and victory. He crowed that the old man was finally defenseless, but Shakiro just smirked at the fatal miscalculation. Shock paralyzed the villain as the master revealed he was packing more than 18 hidden spares. Calmly, he explained these were his emergency stashes meant only for the most desperate of hours. He pointed out that the Cardinal's blood magic was flickering. The monster was finally running on fumes. Seizing the moment, the weapon master prepared to end it all with a devastating spear art. Lightning flash. The spear's third form struck with blinding speed, leaving the villain wide open. The Cardinal gasped in disbelief, realizing the master had been holding back his deadliest techniques. Without a breath, the master unleashed the second form, then the first, prepping for the final execution. He detonated Form 0, creating an explosion so massive, the protagonist compared it to modern heavy artillery. In that blinding flash, our hero truly understood why this man was a legend among the Stellar Five. Panting, the master noted that his regular spear was nearly pulverized by the sheer force of his own move. It had been ages since he had tasted such a brutal fight, but as he paused to catch his breath, the Cardinal flashed a demonic grin, mocking the master for finally running out of steel. Suddenly, a terrifying surge of blood magic erupted, triggering a hidden grudge quest for our hero. This was it, the mission to hunt down the 8 successors who ruled the world 5 centuries ago. And one of them was the direct heir to the Blood Demon Berserk's chaotic legacy. The system pinged with an epic quest from Daius, revealing the level 301 nightmare standing before them. This was Vladimir, an inquisitor of the Azuric cult and the true successor of the Berserk bloodline. Born of Hell, the blood demon had once stained the world in gore after Daius failed to slay the Seven Kings. Since the original warriors died before their duel, Daius left it to his student to finish the job. Reality hit our hero like a truck. This monster was one of those legendary successors, and he was hunting the master. But as a debuff master, our hero felt utterly helpless against such an overwhelming level gap. Vladimir hissed that he hated using his true form because it was repulsive and drained his life force. He couldn't believe a dying old man forced his hand, while Shakiro questioned if this power came from his cult. Wrong, the monster spat, revealing that this world-ending power was gifted by a far more terrifying entity. Simple deaths are a mercy he won't grant. Vladimir promised to turn the Colosseum into pure nightmare fuel. He pictured their severed heads as grim trophies at the gates, just as the old master lunged. Shakiro struck with a desperate palm, but the demon didn't flinch. Truly pathetic, Vladimir mocked. Discarding his weapon, Vladimir began savagely crushing the elder's skull under his heel in a blinding rage. The demon hungered for the student's life, but the warrior spat that he was never the boy's master. As he struggled to rise, he revealed the youth served a power that far outclassed them both. The elder's refusal to die irritated the demon. Look closely, Shakiro wheezed witness a true spell. It was a forbidden art never intended for the boy. A sudden chill gripped the Crimson Continent. These were legendary hero skills, Zone of Mortality, shattering the target's every defense with a single touch. Combined with Zone of Frailty, it devoured stamina and mana. The blood demon's air was finally faltering. You lost your focus, the master mocked. The Crimson Cardinal froze as the trap finally snapped shut. Shards of shattered steel began to swirl around Shakiro. The weapon master prepared his final desperate stand. His ultimate technique, 10,000 Heavenly Flower Rain, began to manifest in a storm of light. Vladimir let out a blood-curdling scream just before a colossal explosion leveled the entire arena floor. This was a secret art found in ancient ruins mastered by Shakiro in a lifetime of constant war. Thousands of blades danced like delicate petals in the wind, yet struck with lethal, soul-tearing precision. The legendary lotus of the battlefield had bloomed. Broken Vladimir finally admitted the old man won. If those weapons weren't broken shards, the demon hissed, I would have been erased from history. He turned to our protagonist, explaining how these forgotten skills had finally resurfaced in his memory. The debuffs matched reports from the failed ritual ruins. He was the one who sabotaged everything. The blood user swore a dark vow. For ruining his ritual and this fight, he would return. Siegfried watched the monster escape in a fury, then rushed to the side of the falling elder. Shakiro collapsed, admitting that without the boy's help, this victory would have been an impossible dream. With a cult now hunting him, the youth needed power. Still, he begged the master to seek healing. It is pointless, the master whispered. Death, which he had cheated for years, was finally here. He handed over ancient glowing scrolls. These were his secret techniques, his final legacy to the young hero. They were weaker than Daius's arts, but the youth wept, begging the old man to stay alive. You were always my teacher, the boy cried. In his final moments, the warrior's mind drifted back. He remembered the day he became champion. Amidst the cheers, a stranger approached to offer his praise. The man explained they had shared the same bloody arena floor for over 10 years. Now a free man, the stranger asked about his future. The young Shakiro looked toward the horizon. He spoke of a grand journey to find hidden treasures and witness the world's many wonders. He planned to train students, a goal that left the hardened lone warrior completely caught off guard. I thought you hated people, the man joked. Shakiro simply smiled at the thought of legacy. He knew he would never be the greatest warrior, but if he taught enough talented disciples, one would eventually rise to reshape the world. He was betting his entire life on that one student. Back in the present, the dying master smiled. I always saw you as my true successor. He placed his final bet on the boy before fading away. This world felt far too real. Created by Hive, every master and warrior was just data, but their impact was heavy and real. They were just non-player characters, yet the bond Siegfried felt with Shakiro was undeniably real. This virtual mentor had shared his soul and granted the boy power beyond mere lines of code. To Mortem, Sung Han, the time spent with the weapon master wasn't digital, it was truly life-changing. He didn't understand why he was the final bet, but he swore to make the old man proud. The legendary mentor took his final breath, leaving the player with a heart full of heavy grief. Moments later, a message arrived from Ghost Ran. The Empire's special event was about to begin. Classic him. They knew this was the ultimate window to strike. Teasing that she clearly missed him, he linked the chaos to her name, Gosran, the Clear One. While his mentor pictured her still grinding EXP in those dusty ruins, our hero had other theories. All signs pointed to Battle Survival, the unreleased event currently shattering the internet with hype. Sponsored by the continent's superpower, the Moroccan Empire, this lethal gauntlet was strictly for players only. Set on a scorched island within the White Archipelago, contestants are forced into a brutal free-for-all. Survival is the only win condition in this hellscape, where the victor claims a literal kingdom. A historic first for the game, yet controversy raged over the savage penalties for those who failed. Losing means a total reset to level 1 and a decade-long lockout from the Room of Transcendence. 10 years of zero progress, the ultimate game over, that had every player shaking in their boots. The strategist smelled a rat. This wasn't a corporate update, but the Emperor's personal handiwork. Asked if he'd join our main character, gave a hard no, terrified of catching that career-ending penalty. He wasn't delusional. 10,000 monsters way stronger than him were already lining up for blood. That explains the elemental mage's warning to stay far away, shifting his focus to his loot. Armed with his late master's relics and a mysterious map, he chose to ghost the entire tournament. His hamster sidekick's eyes doubled in size at the treasure map, smelling a grand gold-filled adventure. But the youth was just checking level requirements. He was in no rush to play the hero. Since this secret map was for his eyes only, he set out to find a skybound airship. Aiming for the southern seas, his excitement plummeted when he found nothing but a rotting, broken hull. The duo stared in horror at the heap of junk, wondering if they'd even make it off the dock. Across the globe at Hive's United States headquarters, a stressed-out staffer was hitting her breaking point. Drowning in toxic player feedback about the survival event, she took her grievances straight to the vice chairman. Oppenheimer, the Hexagon team lead, was baffled. They were getting roasted for content they hadn't even coded. As Deputy GM Hayami Cha panicked over tanking stock prices, Oppenheimer coolly assured her the company was rock solid. He dropped a bombshell. They just managed the network. The world inside now creates its own destiny. The insane penalties terrified her, but he insisted that virtual chaos must be settled by virtual means. Trust the players, he said. Just keep the lights on. But the deputy wasn't buying the hands-off approach. Even after 3 years at Hive, she couldn't wrap her head around how this digital world kept evolving. Yet the vice chairman smiled. This unpredictability was the game's true soul. Not even the CEO knew the ending. The script was unwritten. Not even the in-game deities could foresee the storm brewing on the horizon. Back in the skies, the hamster was vibing, convinced he was actually soaring through the clouds himself. "Keep it down, buddy," the hero whispered, scanning for other passengers before the truth finally hit him. They were totally alone. Surprisingly, this flying antique hadn't plummeted out of the sky. Yet. A sudden voice made him jump. The owner claimed the death trap look was just a vintage aesthetic. Realizing he was talking to a plastered captain, he frantically pointed out that someone should probably be steering. Kids these days, the captain scoffed, revealing his high-tech autopilot, a broom wedged into the steering wheel. Since they were just going straight, the youth questioned the man's credentials. The captain just gave a toothy grin. He promised a smooth ride under clear skies, but our hero's anxiety was already redlining. Trapped on this flying disaster, Siegfried decided to use the downtime to finally power up. He pulled out the python core from the ruins, ready to consume its raw essence with a flick of a skill. The core dissolved into his veins, boosting his light energy and resistance by a massive 60 points. With this new power, he evolved Flying Spur into the electrified high-voltage Lightning Flying Spur. Now lightning chains between enemies, with every strike unlocking the terrifying divine retribution alongside it. This upgraded heavy strike now blasts 3 lethal cones of electricity, incinerating everything in its path. Grinning at his new thunderous arsenal, the warrior hungered for the absolute carnage he was about to unleash, obliterating entire squads in a single fluid heartbeat. But first things first, he cracked open the warrior's legacy box to uncover the secrets of the lightning flash and the 10,000 heavenly flower rain. This legendary style channels the 4 mythic beasts, guarding the world's quadrants, spanning 4 devastating forms. Then there's the second hidden art, which demands flawless synchronization of an entire arsenal. As the hours ticked by, our hero drifted off right there on the floor. A sudden grating racket jolted him awake, realizing he'd passed out mid-training. Suddenly, the captain's roar echoed, commanding everyone topside, because a massive cyclone was closing in. Talk about a scam. That drunk pilot promised clear skies. But the moment he hit the deck, a monstrous vortex loomed ahead, leaving him speechless. Han felt his survival odds drop to 0 while he desperately screamed at the captain to steer clear of the storm's deadly eye. But right as the old drunk started bragging about his expert seafaring skills against the gale, his captain's hat whipped away and jammed straight into the engine, sparking a total meltdown. Seeing the old man's face, it hit him. The guy was still wasted. Now, our hero, his pet, and this liability were plummeting toward their doom. The system pinged a warning. 0 maintenance had killed the engine, leaving the ship dead in the air. As the adventurer panicked, the geezer claimed they could still survive the fall, but Han wasn't buying it. Siegfried's only response would likely come from the afterlife. This looked like the end of his heroic journey. Thinking fast, our boy took the only path left. He lined up a perfect shot using the drunk as a human cushion to stick the landing. Taesung Han's jaw dropped when he saw that a literal broom was still trying to steer the wreckage. The captain exploded, demanding to know what the kid was doing. But Han snapped back that he was taking over since a drunk can't even oil a gear. The old man whined about being broke, admitting some loan shark at the pub was using his wife to shake him down. Siegfried's temper flared and they started brawling for the wheel. Mid-punch, Han spotted something terrifying and forced the old man to look at the nightmare unfolding ahead. They were dead center of the cyclone, and as the windshield shattered, pure terror took hold. In an instant, the storm's maw swallowed the ancient ship whole. The system blinked to life. Our hero had breached the barrier and was now a forced player, becoming contestant number 10,001. Waking up by a waterfall, he breathed a sigh of relief, before cursing that drunk pilot to hell, swearing he was done with air travel forever. He immediately checked his packed rune, relieved to find his pets were still kicking. But where was he? The map labeled this place Erangel Zone 9. Time to find some high ground, to scout for a village or a way out. Our hero began the steep trek, blitzing through the rugged terrain at breakneck speed. Finally reaching the peak, he surveyed the land. His eyes darted around, searching for any sign of civilization, and spotted a massive town that surely had a gateway. But as he went to grab his hamster, a low rumble caught his ear. A fleet of airships was descending upon the valley. Han figured an all-out war had broken out on this tiny rock. But when the system pinged, his blood boiled. He'd been drafted into Battle Survivor, and the clock was ticking. Han stood there stunned. Suddenly, 4 massive pillars breached the sea, shooting crimson beams skyward. A suppression barrier locked the island down as the self-destruct sequence hummed to life, sending his stress levels through the roof. But as he bolted for safety, a shadow flickered behind him, manifesting as Reception Anine, the official AI assistant for this death game. The bot, prepared to brief our hero on the bloody rules of the survivor's battle. Rule number 1. You keep only your most vital gear. Everything else vanishes into thin air. Rule 2. Villages offer a brief sanctuary, but once those safe zones are annihilated, every player inside is instantly eliminated. The map is a ticking time bomb, with every sector except the final one being randomly erased from existence. Its briefing complete, the mysterious entity vanished into thin air, after offering a chilling wish of good luck. Tianfenghan reached out to stop it, his heart sinking as a wave of pure dread washed over him. The golem's rules were beyond brutal, and just then, massive airships began breaching the island's mystical barrier. Legions of contestants swarmed the decks before diving headfirst toward the island in a chaotic airborne invasion. Boots hit the dirt as the 5-second countdown ticked away, leaving every survivor breathless and on edge. As the clock hit 0, the beach transformed into a gore-soaked slaughterhouse, where the first victim fell instantly. Lives were extinguished in seconds, while our protagonist watched from afar, revolted by the sheer animalistic savagery. Knowing 5,000 lives would be snuffed out on that shore, the hero retreated toward the safety of Zone 13. He needed to fix the odds, but he knew other players would definitely have the same desperate idea. Suddenly, an arrow whistled toward his head, but he reacted with a lightning-fast quick draw to block it. His cover was blown, leaving the hidden ambusher paralyzed in shock that his sneak attack had been countered. Siegfried countered instantly, securing his first kill, while realizing the surrounding woods were already crawling with enemies. He froze as the distant sound of voices echoed through the trees, signaling more trouble was closing in. The debuff specialist vanished into the foliage just as the heavy hitters from the GT Guild emerged. As the 8th strongest guild in the game, their presence meant the big players had officially entered the chat. These weren't just low-level grunts. The real GT elites were nearby, even as the slain player's body dissipated. The corpse vanished, leaving behind a mythical Soul Division necklace, an item of legendary power. This relic was a game-changer, allowing its wielder to unlock and master an entirely additional character class. Dual classes were leagues above hybrid builds, granting the godlike ability to master 2 opposing professions at once. Siegfried's heart ached as the GT members snatched up the loot, wondering how a weakling possessed such power. The guild members flexed the mythical necklace, bragging about the insane game-breaking abilities they now held. One girl dreamed of the riches its sale would bring, but her teammate warned the item made her a target. While they bickered over the prize, the 3rd member silently summoned his weapon with a predatory glint. He called the necklace marvelous, his voice dripping with an intrigue that sent chills down his teammates' spines. Without warning, the glasses-wearing traitor butchered his own allies and snatched the mythical treasure for himself. He didn't see it as a betrayal, claiming they were all seconds away from murdering each other anyway. With a smirk, he deactivated his metamorphic mask skill, revealing his true identity to the world. Meet BJ Raptor, the 99th strongest player, and a level 198 Asura, who never belonged to GT. Our protagonist was floored. A high-tier ranker had no business risking their reputation in a bloodbath like this. BJ Raptor ignored the stakes instead, thanking his livestream viewers for the massive wave of donations pouring in. His master plan to humiliate the GT Guild was a viral success, and the internet was absolutely loving it. He flashed the mythical item, cheerfully telling his fans how he'd use it to build the ultimate dual class. The comments section exploded with the young man agreeing that a magic-based secondary class was the best move. Siegfried realized this was a massive stream, and the rain of donations proved the swordsman had a fanatical following. He cursed his luck as the streamer's presence crushed his stealth mission, yet he remained motionless in the shadows. He waited for the pro to pass, but the ranker suddenly stopped claiming he'd found something very interesting. The ranker dangled the protagonist's hamster before his viewers announcing his plan to make the creature his own. Even as the ranker threatened to slay its current master, the little beast stood its ground with fierce loyalty. Ham didn't flinch rudely, asserting that its master was more than enough to crush the arrogant ranker. BJ Raptor laughed, declaring himself the island's apex predator, before mockingly questioning the tiny pet's faith. The hamster doubled down on its master's victory, its tiny eyes filled with absolute unwavering confidence. The great forest spirit spat directly in the ranker's face, refusing to ever acknowledge someone like him as master. The ranker's expression turned cold and murderous as his grip tightened around the defenseless little hamster. The unhinged streamer waited with sadistic glee, wondering if the owner would show before he crushed the hamster into pulp. Suddenly, a wave of killing intent washed over BJ Raptor as he sensed the warrior lurking right behind his back. He came for Ham, but the ranker sneered, dismissing him as a total scrub. Refusing to back down, the warrior lunged at his prey. His strike missed by a mile as the streamer danced away looking bored. The ranker expected some real spice from Tian, Songhan, but reality hit hard. The level gap was an absolute abyss. Even so, the confrontation was just getting started. Effortlessly dodging every desperate swing, the ranker complained that such a pathetic underdog was killing his stream's hype. He had zero use for a pet like Ham anymore. With a cold smirk, the streamer braced himself for his next move. He tossed the tiny spirit aside like trash. While our hero was distracted by his falling comrade, the monstrous Asura vanished, reappearing instantly to strike. But the warrior's instinct screamed, and he parried just in the nick of time. The ranker was stunned. No level 53 should have survived that strike. Even so, the protagonist's arm shook violently from the impact, leaving him reeling backward and gasping for air. In that moment, the swordsman faced a terrifying, undeniable truth. He was utterly outmatched by this monster's raw power. Yet he forced his racing heart to still maintaining a razor-sharp focus. His only hope was reaching the nearest safe zone, summoning Ham and vanishing to another corner of the map. Suddenly, the streamer mocked him, asking if he was trying to fly away. With a twisted grin, he offered a helping hand. Massive slashes tore the ground apart, shredding the terrain and sending our hero plummeting into the void. And now, the streamer told his chat, the hero was awakening before plunging into the abyss, right behind him. As the streamer staged this bloodbath for his fans, the hero finally realized his opponent was a complete psychopath. A massive blast rocked the area. Nearby, an elite from the 9th-ranked Premier Guild braced for impact, sensing the chaos. Elsewhere, a stone-armed player stood over the corpses of 2 adventurers, his grim task finally complete. Exhausted but victorious, he exhaled as the forest erupted in flames. Meanwhile, our hero was running like hell, with the psycho streamer hot on his heels taunting him to stop running and fight like a man. BJ Raptor saw right through him. He knew the kid was gunning for a village to escape via teleport. The streamer was just milking the chase for more donations. But the moment he decided to get lethal, spectral chains erupted from the shadows, shackling him instantly. The warrior had finally popped his speed restriction skill. The ranker's stats plummeted, teaching him the hard way why they call our boy the debuff master. Suddenly, a blade whistled through the air. It aimed straight for the streamer's spine, but the Asura parried it with a brutal kick. Now that monster was visibly irritated by the stinging light attribute shocks. Yet his predator eyes caught something unexpected. The protagonist's weapon was bouncing between the trees like a pinball. Suddenly, the challenger materialized right behind the ranker's back, revealing the trap's true potential before unleashing supreme content. He was one heartbeat away from landing a stun. But the ranker turned with a twisted, bloodthirsty grin, declaring his absolute joy at the challenge. He summoned a secondary blade, effortlessly shredding the vines that dared to bind him. He didn't just break the trap, he broke the caster too. An explosion erupted, shattering our hero's gear into dust. Left, mangled without an arm or a leg, the swordsman cursed his decision to fight. He realized too late that his fate was sealed regardless. The ranker actually complimented him, amazed that the kid survived a direct hit. He took back the weakling comment, admitting the protagonist outclassed even some elite players he knew. But the level gap was an insurmountable wall. Victory was mathematically impossible. Looking into the camera, he let his chat vote on the most gruesome way to end our hero. As he begged for donations, a system alert flashed. Their current coordinates were about to be carpet-bombed. 60 seconds until annihilation. BJ Raptor demanded fast cash from his fans to decide the hero's final fate. But the chat grew restless. Suddenly, a whale named 1001 Jin dropped a massive donation, requesting the streamer to bail and let the airstrike do the dirty work. Seeing the payout, the streamer thanked his benefactor. and happily accepted the deal. He mocked the broken warrior, telling him how lucky he was that a viewer paid for his mercy. Our hero could only wonder about the identity of his mysterious savior. The rancor vanished, leaving the protagonist paralyzed and bleeding in the dirt, cursing his miserable luck. He realized he'd run into a literal god who left him too broken to even reach for a potion. Watching BJ Raptor tear his arm off, he spiraled into a dark panic before forcing the intrusive thoughts away. Overwhelming dread and regret washed over him, leading our hero to whisper a final apology to his mother. Realizing he'd hit a dead end, the terrified player felt his heart race as his final seconds ticked away. Hope vanished the moment that timer hit 0. Game over. Our main character was history. Cut to 7 days later. The shattered gamer sat rotting in his room, mindlessly scrolling while drowning in a sea of empty bottles. He cursed the massive new loan, suffocating him a mountain of interest that dwarfed his original debt. This warrior beat himself up for not cashing out loot earlier, replaying every bad decision that landed him in this hell. Staring at the astronomical debt, he pinned all his rage on the wasted captain who dragged him there. He swore to catch those hands the next time they met, leaving the depressed gamer sobbing in his misery. Just as he accepted being a slave to his bills, a sudden ping from Wu Jin Chen hit his inbox. He didn't even want to look, but the message was a shocker. He was somehow still alive inside the game. Wasting no time, our main character dove back into BMW, spawning inside a Zone 12 hotel to check his status. He nearly cried with relief, seeing it was just a standard death penalty. Suddenly, a blur lunged at him. It was just his loyal summon. Seeing the bandages, the hero rushed to check on his injured furry companion. The creature was sobbing, terrified he'd failed his master, but our warrior insisted the blame was solely his own. He'd failed to protect him. Right then, his mentor's voice echoed in his head, confirming he was indeed alive. Wu Jin Chen stood right there. Our main character was convinced the guy was a game master given his presence, but the man just laughed it off. The high-level pro then broke down how the hero managed to survive. Siegfried suspected a system glitch, but the expert had a far more shocking explanation for his survival. He revealed the fighter had somehow dodged the lethal reach of the self-destructing aura. That rang a bell. Wu Jin Chen explained, the aura was actually a massive barrier, designed to nerf every player. It triggers upon entry, but our hero had literally crashed onto the shore before the skill even activated. Since he was already inside the perimeter, the debuff missed him. Our guy finally started putting the pieces together. By dodging that massive nerf, he'd escaped permanent deletion. Hearing this, a huge weight lifted off the hero. He'd been scared out of his mind. Still confused, he asked Wu Jin Chen what he was even doing there. He thought the pro was competing, but the man just chuckled, comparing that to a man entering a playground, throwing hands with toddlers. That definitely weirded our hero out. Plus, Wu Jin Chen hadn't even signed up. This made the mystery of his arrival deeper. Then, the top-tier player dropped a bombshell about himself. He admitted he was temporarily banned from combat, glancing down at his hand, which was twitching uncontrollably. Breaking into the island had clearly taken a toll. He brushed it off, refocusing on the bigger picture. The current event was the real priority. The veteran player then began breaking down the island's power dynamics. There were 4 main factions. Group 1, the trash-tier solo players, a label that seriously ticked our protagonist off. Next were the heavy hitters, the elite-ranking guilds, Premier and GT, who played for keeps. Finally, there were the star influencers, like Guangjin Li, the Genesis operative who had nearly killed our hero. Our swordsman was floored that a top ranker served Genesis. But a major twist was coming. His friend set him straight, but the truth was scarier. The massive guilds that once crushed him were here. The very people who treated him like garbage were on the hunt. Only 3 top 10 guilds showed up. He wondered if giants like Seraphim were lurking, but the pro shook his head. They wouldn't take the bait. They didn't have the stomach for such a high-stakes gamble. To them, the reward just wasn't worth it. However, the 3 guilds currently on the island were hungry for power, making them bold enough to dive in. Even then, they were playing it safe. GT and Premier flooded the zone with low-level grunts as cannon fodder. Their strategy was simple: overwhelm everyone with numbers. Suddenly it clicked why the GT members were so weak. They were just level 1 nobodies. But Genesis had a much deadlier counterplay in mind to dismantle that strategy. They hired a legendary ranker who could solo the entire island. Talk about an absolute power move. Songon had to hand it to them. Genesis was playing 4D chess by using a mercenary instead of themselves. He puzzled over the streamer's true motives, but the promise of becoming the vice leader of Genesis completely floored him. You see, BJ Raptor was a gaming prodigy since childhood, but fame rotted his soul and fueled his wicked schemes. His toxic attitude and obsession with boosting his accounts left him blacklisted from every top-tier guild. Even as the youngest pro players treated him like a plague, our hero's face darkened, complaining about quitting streams and labeling the kid as a greedy donation hunter. However, the mentor argued the young man was merely terrified of wasting his god-tier talent. It hit the protagonist. Then success is a lonely road. Then desire, the legendary Genesis master, and future Pro Gamer Association head vowed to make the boy his right hand if he clinched victory. If the streamer wins and hands his crown to Hyungsok Chae, he'll build an absolute empire. He'd reign supreme over every NPC as the first player king. But as the explanation dragged on, the hero snapped. The reality was too bitter to swallow. The younger one started trashing Desire, mocking his dual crown ambitions before demanding the guide cough up some secret intel. The mission was clear: the protagonist had to emerge as the ultimate survivor battle champion. He was already in the trenches, but the veteran swordsman warned that the path ahead was hellish. He looked pathetic next to Raptor until he recalled that massive donation that flipped the script. He questioned if his companion was the mysterious benefactor, but the man turned beet red with embarrassment. He dropped a hint about a winning strategy, instantly catching the protagonist's attention. The boy whispered about a secret exploit that only a true debuff master could trigger. The protagonist logged back in with a grin, while Ham apologized profusely for his previous defeat. The master shrugged it off, promising cold-blooded revenge. But as the hamster panicked, the high-level pro stepped in, vowing to protect the pet, while our hero did his thing. Siegfried offered to treat Wu Zhenchong to a celebratory feast, which left him absolutely stunned. Knowing how cheap he usually is, the hero laughed, admitting he couldn't afford five-star dining anyway. His crew promised to finish the talk after his win, barely offering a good luck before splitting. Still, the protagonist felt ice-cold and ready. His survival was practically a done deal now. Moving like a shadow, the debuff master began navigating the treacherous map. The silence was eerie, meaning every remaining killer was probably converging on Zone 13. Since the final zone wasn't live yet, everyone had to be camping in Zone 8. Just as he prepared to move, a massive explosion from two ambushers nearly blew his eardrums. They jumped a lone survivor, beating him within an inch of his digital life. The brawler demanded a surrender, while the swordsman barked at him to finish it fast. With the zone about to go nuclear, the victim's eyes burned with rage at his teammate's betrayal. His former ally just sneered, saying it was his fault for being weak and getting tagged. Suddenly, the traitor took a hit to the spine. Before he could even blink, a heavy blunt weapon smashed him into the wall before flying back to its master's hand. Our hero had arrived. The wounded boy watched in awe as his tormentors were effortlessly deleted. A one-shot kill from a lower-level player. Insane. But then that same weapon pointed right at him. Siegfried made it clear everyone here was a target, and he was next on the list. But checking the kid's stats, the hero froze. The boy belonged to a non-combat class. A golem maker surviving this long was a miracle, but he prepared to end the level 81 creator. Named Sai Shanggu, he figured a quick death was better than being blown to bits. The boy begged. He pleaded for his life, claiming his mother needed him, but the protagonist stayed stone-faced. Yet seeing the genuine desperation and tears in the boy's eyes, the hero's resolve wavered. Finally, he sighed and told the kid to vanish before the bombs turned the zone into a graveyard. The debuff master actually tossed him a stamina elixir. Just like that, Shanggu stood there, overwhelmed with gratitude for the one man who always softens up at the mention of a mother. As the endgame approached, our hero hoped the pro's elite advice would actually pay off as promised. This brutal survival marathon had lasted days. Now zones 8 and 12 were 60 seconds from total annihilation. Under a minute until the bombing. The drained streamer updated his chat as the final zone finally emerged. The climax was near, but lurking in the shadows, a hidden watcher grew increasingly irritated by his presence. Eyeing the loot pile, the hunter knew the streamer was a killer, but he was their only path forward. To enter the final zone, they had to move. One hunter bet that the streamer was finally too exhausted. His ally agreed. Even legendary prodigies bleed. The old man then briefed his stream on their final gambit. They'd launch a synchronized assault to reach safety as the celestial circle finally manifested in the sky. Watching the losers team up, the streamer mocked their pathetic lack of honor for all his viewers to see. Action time. The boy vanished into the tunnel, sprinting full tilt toward the safety of Zone 13. The pack hunted him down, racing against fate with only 3 seconds left before the bombs dropped. They scrambled for cover, but when the clock struck 0, a massive energy beam vaporized the slow ones. Only 2 survivors remained, but just as one started gloating about making it through the hellfire, Raptor caught their scent. In a flash of cold steel, he wiped both of them off the map. With the trash cleared, he entered the final zone, laughing at the weaklings sent by GT and Premier. He crossed the portal and froze in shock. The island's ultimate arena was a brutal snow-covered biome. BJ Raptor played it cool, praising the majestic view while assuming his rivals were still lagging behind. He started bragging to the staff about his win, but the system suddenly pinged with a grim notification. 2 other players were still alive. Before he could even vent his frustration, a heavy vehicle slammed into him. He was mowed down instantly. The violent collision forced him to cough up blood as he hit the snow. Fury erupted within the streamer. That strike nearly killed him, and he was dying to see who did it. He looked up to see a level 81 tank golem, the iron beast known as the range wagon. The driver, Shanggu, stared in disbelief. He couldn't believe the ranker survived such a devastating impact. The ranker finally understood. This man had used his armored vehicle to survive the zone's total annihilation. But just as the golem maker bragged about his invincible ride, it crumbled into dust and vanished. Before he could blink, the ranker seized his throat and slammed him violently into the frozen ground. The streamer confessed that this golem maker was only the second player on this island to catch his eye. He survived the bombing and managed to wound him. But remember, the first guy who did that is now a corpse. The golem maker met his gruesome end, leaving behind a curious item that piqued the streamer's interest. Upon death, he dropped a masterwork ring and a sentimental memory of his mother. The ranker found it pathetic. As the ranker wondered who the final survivor was, a sudden presence materialized directly behind his back. The survivor quickly retreated. The ranker stood stunned, unable to believe he failed to detect his last opponent. Then it hit him. He and the one reaching for the ring had actually crossed paths before. Our hero realized the boy hadn't lied about his mother. Siegfried even thanked the ranker for breaking him. He then pointed out how soul-crushing 5 days of non-stop combat must have been during his absence. The hero vowed to eliminate the boy and grant him eternal rest. As those words left his lips, killing intent flooded the snowy plains. A voice called his opponent weak, the same loser he already crushed. That pathetic claim sent the debuff master into a blind rage. How dare this weakling talk back? The ranker had to admit the kid was tough. He survived with missing limbs in a detonating death zone, one leg left and surrounded by fire. The ranker realized his detection failed not because of exhaustion, but because of the stealth magic in that poncho. He also saw the protagonist's shiny new gear. That legendary equipment changed everything. He became obsessed with finding out what happened earlier that day. Flashback to the Intervention Hotel. Our hero asked for that life-altering advice, and Wu Jinchuan finally spoke. The island's self-destruction failed to touch our hero, proving he wasn't bound by the game's rigid system. Finally, it clicked on this chaotic island he possessed, absolute unchecked free will to forge his own destiny. He could bypass forbidden zones with ease, completely outmaneuvering both the map and the legendary Siegfried. While Siegfried panicked about being eliminated in restricted areas, his ally remained calm. That wouldn't happen to them. The guard's sharp tactical mind left our hero stunned just as Wu Jinchan dropped a cryptic warning. He cautioned that dying again would expose his secret edge, but our protagonist vowed he wouldn't lose twice. Moments later, the young warrior ventured deep into the second zone, a place strictly off-limits to every other player. Tae-Sung Han's jaw dropped when he realized his friend's wild theories were actually 100% true. He weaponized these forbidden zones, using them as a sanctuary, while other players tore each other apart outside. This newfound freedom allowed him to scavenge top-tier loot dropped by every single player eliminated on the map. Tae-Sung Han smirked, planning to gear up while his rival exhausted himself in a pointless uphill struggle. He scavenged a heavy blunt weapon and a simple poncho, yet he knew this wasn't nearly enough yet. Gear alone wouldn't secure the win. He needed raw power. That's when he remembered his ultimate hidden trump card. Flash forward to now, the master of debuffs and the Asura were finally standing face to face. While the entire chat simped for the streamer, one lone viewer commented about having a weird gut feeling. Seeing a prediction of his defeat enraged the high ranker, fueling his desperate need to crush the competition. Obsessed with going pro, he grew sick of his toxic fans, dreaming of how this win would change everything. No more making videos. He told his chat to chill, claiming that despite his fatigue, he was fine. He screamed that a level 50 couldn't touch him and charged, but our hero dodged with millisecond precision. The streamer's ego took a hit when his weak opponent landed a strike he barely managed to block. Pain surged through him, sparking irritation, yet the ranker couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of intrigue. High-tier gear shouldn't make a weakling this strong, but Siegfried muttered that the real show hadn't started. Panic was premature. Since he hadn't revealed his true strength yet, the streamer glanced at his chaotic chat. Seeing his own fans praise his opponent sent him into an absolute uncontrollable state of pure blinding rage. Our hero suddenly addressed the hostile audience directly, leaving the thousands of viewers completely baffled and stunned. Nobody expected him to speak up, as he calmly apologized to those who actually supported his toxic rival. Then the protagonist made a cold declaration he was about to put this arrogant young genius in his place. His fanbase exploded instantly, with many viewers begging the mysterious warrior to start his own legendary livestream. Elsewhere, the pet chirped at its caretaker, checking on its master, a clear sign of genuine concern to the guard. Though the Sundara hamster tried to play it cool, the hidden class player promised that everything was under control. This filled the forest spirit with pure bliss. Wu Zhenchao had already foreseen our hero's winning strategy. He wasn't just picking random trash. His current weapon was a heavy hitter, but suffered from agonizingly slow speed. He negated that weakness instantly by equipping Quicksilver gloves to massively boost his overall attack speed and lethality. Our hero didn't stop there, slotting in the Piercing of Greed to significantly amplify his vital lifesteal capabilities. He realized his friend's game knowledge eclipsed the rankers, proving that rank isn't everything when it comes to strategy. Every item was chosen specifically to counter his foe. Still, the streamer's god-tier reaction speed kept him dangerous. Fatigue or not, he still held the advantage. Meanwhile, our hero watched with curiosity as things took a turn. The arrogant prodigy cackled after landing a blow, mocking the hero about teaching him a lesson in true power. He claimed he'd been holding back, but his own chat began roasting him for losing his absolute cool. When they predicted his loss, he snapped at them, leaving his entire audience completely shocked by his toxic outburst. Following that outburst, the streamer spat that since they weren't being supportive, his fans were essentially worthless trash. Confusion turned to fury as he insulted them, calling his viewers jobless losers wasting their lives on his stream. He told them to shut up, leaving our hero stunned. This opponent was far more unhinged than he first thought. After trashing his fans, the ranker sneered that the MC missed his only chance to attack while he was invisible. He vowed to make the hero regret that hesitation, but our protagonist just gave a cold, confident smirk in response. But our hero wasn't out of tricks just yet. With a roar, they lunged into their final explosive collision. Steel clashed against steel, but despite his superior level, a cold chill of unease gripped the ranker. He couldn't shake the nagging dread that victory was slipping away, even as he watched the main character struggle. The hero was barely evading his lethal strikes. Still, the ranker found himself haunted by the kid's unnervingly calm eyes. That total lack of fear was starting to get under his skin. He absolutely loathed the protagonist's sheer audacity. Sick of that overconfident stare, he hurled his dagger. In a heartbeat, the hero triggered his quick draw. Our protagonist raised his shield just in time, but shock hit him as the blade pierced straight through his defense. Without missing a beat, the boy lunged forward, catching our hero completely off guard. The streamer delivered a brutal kick, sending the protagonist reeling until he slammed his hand into the frozen ground. Using the snow to kill his momentum, he pivoted and charged right back. Witnessing this, the ranker gave chase, mocking the debuff master for finally losing his cool and running away. He looked like a cornered dog. The streamer figured he was being baited into the woods for a trap. He assumed the target wanted to use more debuffs, but he found the whole plan pathetic. Suddenly, the boy blinked right in front of his foe, unleashing a devastating wide-arc slash. The strike leveled the forest, but our hero rolled away just in time, grabbing a falling trunk mid-air. He channeled every ounce of strength and hurled the tree. The ranker was stunned by such pure insanity. Despite the chaos, he didn't flinch, expertly slicing the massive projectile in half with one clean stroke. He was ready to end the hero's life until he spotted a spear whistling through the air toward him. Glowing with radiant light, the projectile closed in. He couldn't believe how fast this guy actually was. The tree was just a decoy to hide the spear, but the seasoned warrior kept his cool. Deflecting it with his twin blades, he watched as the protagonist surged forward to reclaim his weapon. The debuff master's icy focus sent a wave of genuine terror through the boy. That's when our hero unleashed the Shakiro Spirit Art's third form, the legendary and lethal Lightning Flash. The strike shattered the enemy's sword and tore through his health. Somehow, the ranker remained standing through the pain. He hissed in agony, his pride wounded. Rage consumed the streamer. He had almost been deleted by a total weakling. This level 50 brat almost took him out. Meanwhile, the hero was still struggling to master that high-level move. He'd only learned it from a manual after all. Suddenly, a sharp, searing pain erupted in his shoulder. The villain saw he'd pushed too hard. That's the price for using power you haven't earned yet, kid. You're not worthy of that art. The hero tensed as the enemy began reforging his blade. Mana swirled as the sword mended. The boy resolved to end this fight instantly with a final certain move. He unleashed the Osera. The protagonist froze, eyes widening as the overwhelming power rushed toward him. Facing certain death, his life flashed before his eyes. He remembered his master's brutal training sessions. He'd complained that the training was literally killing him. The old master just laughed at his weakness. "I'm still holding back, brat." Dagus told him that those without talent have to work twice as hard. He demanded our hero get back on his feet. It was time to finally transcend his limits. The student looked up, asking if he really was just a talentless failure at heart. The old man just frowned. Siegfried wondered if all this blood and sweat was even worth it. He doubted he'd ever reach the top. Without innate talent, was he just chasing a ghost? He trusted the techniques, but his own weak body kept failing him during the basic drills. Maybe someone else deserved the Dais legacy. Hearing that, the master told the boy to watch closely. Out of nowhere, he threw a punch straight at the boy's face. The sheer force was terrifying. The shockwave pulverized the massive boulder behind him. Our hero stood frozen. That strike had missed by a hair. As Taesung-han screamed at the old man for nearly killing him, the master revealed the truth. "I chose you for your eyes." Deus looked at his confused student. "You might be an average fighter, but your gaze is legendary. Those eyes have real value." The MC realized his master was talking about his insane perception. Suddenly, the old man jabbed his eye, snapping him back to reality. As the disciple collapsed, gasping, the master revealed his true criteria. He admired eyes that blazed with defiance against any powerhouse. Our hero hadn't hesitated out of bravery, his brain simply couldn't track that speed. You'll always be a scrub if your body can't match your spirit. Since the training rock was shattered, the master demanded a total restart. Remembering his master's wisdom, the truth finally clicked for the boy. His Asura skill was trash compared to the sheer velocity of that punch. To honor his master, he locked in, sharpening his senses to the max. Like a ghost, he blurred past the first strikes, leaping through the storm. Slipping into the ultimate blind spot, he closed the gap on his prey. BJ Raptor froze, completely rattled by that superhuman reaction time. "You're too slow," the protagonist smirked, summoning his heavy metal. One final smash, later the so-called prodigy was deleted from the game. With the ranker dead, our hero stood alone as the ultimate champion. In the real world, BJ Raptor smashed his VR headset in a total meltdown. He couldn't cope with getting folded by a literal nobody. Vengeance was now his only mission, as night fell over the city. Meanwhile, the system declared our hero the king of battle survival. He knew he'd clutched it by a hair. Rested, his foe was a monster. Then, the god-tier loot dropped, the mythical Soul Division necklace. Taesung Han stared, shook by the insane value of his new treasure. Before deciding to flip it or equip it, a massive airship arrived. A royal red carpet rolled out as elite guards swarmed the deck. Baron Neidelberg stepped forth, hailing Siegfried as the sole survivor. He came as the voice of Emperor Stuttgart himself. The hero bowed low, accepting the royal praise for his bloody victory. The Baron prepared to deliver a life-changing decree from the throne. Our adventurer was zoning out, still reeling from his accidental win. He mentally thanked Wu Jinchan for the massive carry. His mumbling didn't miss the Baron's sharp ears for a second. He played it off as a shiver, prompting the noble to cut to the chase. The Emperor officially granted him lordship over the Prositine region. His identity shifted forever, reborn as the legendary Siegfried von Fruedwasser. With 3 new titles equipped, he was officially royalty now. Taesung Han stood paralyzed. He was now a citizen of the Empire. Being called a king felt weirdly awkward despite the massive flex. "You'll grow into it," the Baron whispered, leaning in close. He warned the new king to hide the truth behind his fluke victory. For the Emperor's reputation, they had to pretend this was all planned. As the rewards piled up, he was relieved they played along. The prize was the Elixir of Validation, a legendary debuff cleanser. He realized the item was useless to him right now. Selling it crossed his mind, but he knew this trump card was worth keeping. 3 days later, the dust of his epic victory finally settled. Clasping a worn-out shovel, the legendary golem maker from the event, Shanggu, was grinding away at a dusty construction site. His foreman barked orders demanding more speed. Despite the exhaustion, the young man pushed his limits to satisfy the boss's relentless pressure. Desperate to fund his mother's life-saving surgery, he endured insults about his performance while being told his struggles weren't special. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Before he could even check the screen, his boss started screaming about slacking off on the clock. The foreman ranted that there were 0 excuses for distractions, but the voice on the line carried news that stopped time. A miracle had happened for young Song-ho. A mysterious donor had finally stepped up for his mother's bone marrow transplant. Even though the benefactor chose to remain a ghost, the weight of the world lifted, and he collapsed in tears of pure gratitude. The hospital needed him to sign the paperwork immediately. Without a second thought, he dropped his tools and sprinted toward Hope. Watching him bolt from the site, his narrow-minded boss and co-workers just assumed he was another quitter, running away from hard labor. Speeding past a luxury ride, the driver teased his passenger about being satisfied. That's when Wu Jinchan spotted our hero. It was wild seeing such kindness from someone living in a cramped studio, though the irony of Chan's massive help wasn't lost on him. With a confident grin, our protagonist revealed his plans to move. It was clear his glow-up was officially in full swing. Siegfried doubled down, explaining how looting the ruins filled his pockets enough to aim for a massive mansion instead of a flat. Anything beats a tiny studio, but Wu Jinchan wasn't letting him off easy, jokingly calling him out for not sharing the wealth. After all the hits he took to help his friend, he felt he deserved a trophy. Then something finally piqued his interest. He couldn't help but smirk when the main character pointed out that the very drink in his hand was his thank you gift. Taesung Han chuckled, promising that a real reward was coming. He wasn't about to leave his ride or die hanging after everything. He sincerely thanked him for the life-altering support. Hearing those words, the high-level pro couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Eugene Chan's tone shifted, sparking curiosity. He questioned the debuff master about his strange choice during the last big fight. Why didn't he nerf the streamer into oblivion? Taesung Han simply explained that his debuffs had a strictly limited proximity. Plus, an opponent that sharp wouldn't slip up twice. Honestly, it would have felt cheap to kick someone when they were already down. Nerfing an exhausted foe just didn't sit right with him. But now he had to worry about how the big guilds would react, especially their boss. Over at the Genesis headquarters, the atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a blade during an emergency meeting. The guildmaster's voice was ice cold as he brought up the humiliating report their top ranker had been absolutely crushed. Losing to a mere level 50 was a disaster. A subordinate tried to play it off as a tiny slip-up begging for forgiveness. Desire wasn't buying it. A 150-level gap isn't a mistake. It's an impossible total failure that defies logic. He calmly placed a heavy hand on the man's shoulder, his eyes piercing through him. "Were you the one in charge of this mess?" The second, the man nodded, his head rolled. Without missing a beat, the guildmaster turned his terrifying gaze toward the rest. He ordered a full dossier on Siegfried immediately. He needed to know exactly who had the guts to derail his grand design. Desire, the tyrant of Genesis, was officially on the warpath. Meanwhile, our hero was busy telling movers to be careful. "Watch the fragile stuff, guys." One of the movers, stunned by the luxury, couldn't help but ask for the secret to his success. How could someone this young afford such a massive penthouse? They figured he had to be some genius CEO or a high-stakes trader. Tae Sung-han just gave them a casual shrug. "Nah, I just play video games for a living," he admitted with a grin. The worker immediately realized he was talking about BMW. Since his own kid was obsessed, he told the main character to keep dominating. Go pro and take it all the way. Once the job was wrapped up, the young man confirmed the final payment went through. He waved them goodbye, finally standing alone in his new kingdom. A massive wave of relief washed over his tired body. A genuine smile broke across his face. He'd actually done it. The dream of moving out was no longer just a fantasy. Just months ago, he wouldn't have dared to imagine living like this. Fate had played a wild card leading him here. Entering that massive event was the best accident ever. The sheer amount of gold he raked in changed his entire reality. He was officially debt-free and owning a luxury crib. He was almost tempted to send a thank you note to the Chaos Maker. Shout out to the drunken captain for starting this chain of events. Now it was time for our hero to get back to business. His target, Herbert's ultimate weapon. Soon he touched down on a lonely, sun-drenched island far to the south. Ham was vibing with the tropical weather, treating it like a 5-star vacation. But his peace was shattered by a stern command. "Keep up or get left behind," the little pet whined, arguing that they should just chill and soak up the island vibes. But his master wasn't having it. This wasn't a holiday, they were there for a mission. Meanwhile, the little hamster. After mocking the main character's stiff attitude, the hero's interest peaked upon finding custom-sized gear. Surviving the chaotic survivor battle, our legend finally touched down on the mythical treasure island. The mad blacksmith's legendary weapon lay hidden here, but an eerie vibe crawled across the island. No mana, no monsters, just dead silence. Honestly, this level of peace felt straight-up ominous. Siegfried jumped as his inventory glitched open and a mysterious map materialized before his eyes. The forest spirit instantly identified the ancient parchment as the long-lost map to the ultimate treasure. The map suddenly bolted. Our hero realized he had to hunt it down before it vanished. He warned his pet to hang on tight, then blasted off like a rocket, annoying the spirit. Chasing the map deep into a dark cavern, Siegfried knew he'd finally found the weapon's lair. A ghostly mana drifted from the depths. Safety first, he parked his hamster sidekick at the entrance. Ham volunteered to stand guard, leaving our hero to face the baffling prize waiting inside alone. As he gazed upon Herbert's final masterpiece, the chamber's torches erupted into life, illuminating the dark. That faint mana pulse came from a necklace. A mythical tier treasure of immense power. This unbreakable relic, the Staff of God, was a tribute to the Lord of Chaos's weapon. Its insane specs stunned him. It could strike targets from beyond the planet's atmosphere. It promised mass destruction, but there was a catch. It only worked once every single year. Something felt off. This clunky limitation didn't match the mad blacksmith's usual stroke of absolute genius. Regardless, he claimed it. The mythical relic scanned his soul and initiated a soul-binding contract immediately. The moment he touched the staff, reality warped. Suddenly, he was trapped inside a mysterious dungeon. A voice boomed from the shadows, declaring our hero the chosen one to finish a legendary task. The debuff master snapped into a combat stance, demanding the mysterious spirit identify itself immediately. The spirit revealed the hero was just seeing a magical mirage of his work. A memory was etched into the weapon. He was face to face with the legendary Herbert. Confronting the blacksmith of death was a shock. He expected a stout dwarf, not a hulking orc. Herbert took offense, bragging his skills crushed any dwarf's ironic since the orc was surprisingly short. Herbert grinned, genuinely thrilled to finally meet the successor who would complete his unfinished life work. Our hero was confused, he just wanted loot, but the orc insisted the Staff of God was incomplete. Since Herbert was long dead, the burden of finishing this masterpiece now fell on our hero's shoulders. The hero exploded. He'd crawled through hell just to find a half-baked weapon, absolutely ridiculous. It was hard to swallow. The legendary weapon Siegfried obsessed over was nothing but an unfinished prototype. Fuming, Tae Sung-han processed the news before slamming the divine Staff of God onto the dirt. The orc was horrified. He didn't entrust his masterpiece to a brat just to be disrespected. Our furious MC snapped back. "I own this now, so you've got zero right to judge me." Stunned, the orc watched as the system window confirmed our hero was the artifact's rightful master. Tae Sung Han threatened to dump the relic somewhere remote, driving the orc into a total frenzy. The spirit folded instantly. He couldn't bear the thought of his life's work being tossed like garbage. After forcing the blacksmith to respect him, the debuff master decided they could finally talk business. When asked how to complete the staff, Herbert insisted the hero first hear his epic life story. As the orc rambled about his ultimate weapon dreams, our main character's patience hit its limit. "Cut the fluff and give me facts," he barked. Surprisingly, the spirit actually agreed to cooperate. With the talk over, our debuff master scored an item that piqued his curiosity. It was Herbert's blueprint, a legendary world-ranked recipe for forging the absolute peak of weaponry. Herbert warned that only a Grandmaster-level blacksmith could ever hope to manifest the blueprint's true power. He mentioned how lucky they were that every era usually produces at least one Grandmaster Smith. But soon he realized this wasn't the main issue. The orc gestured toward the following page. Glancing down, our hero froze. The required materials were absolutely insane. The blacksmith realized these items were legendary rarities, but the hero called it straight up impossible. Who could harvest a demon lord's heart? Tae Sung Han sighed, apologizing for failing to complete the ultimate weapon. His face fell. A defeated Herbert lamented, delaying the staff's creation until his final days. Seeing the hero's cold reaction, the orc snapped at his lack of basic empathy. Siegfried told him to chill out, claiming he understood the situation perfectly. He acknowledged the orc's mythical status, proving he hadn't actually rejected the quest. The hero explained that scavenging such divine components would take an eternity. First, he needed to grind for levels to even stand a chance against those monsters. He told Herbert to stay patient. Hearing this, the blacksmith's eyes glimmered with newfound hope. Admitting he still had much to master, the orc thanked the weapon's future master. To accelerate the hero's growth, Herbert pulled out a hidden trump card for his journey. A Mega Rush Elixir. It boosts EXP by 70% for a full week, with growth logs included. He also handed over a name template, granting a massive 50% discount at B. Marion headquarters. The hero grinned. The legendary smith urged him to reach the peak of power immediately. Only then could his dream manifest. Tae Sung Han nodded, promising to surpass all limits. Outside, the boar spirit stood guard. As soon as the hero emerged from the shadows, the hamster started whining about the delay. Ham Heem demanded to see the legendary blade. The hero nodded, though it still needed finishing touches. With the deal sealed, it was time to reclaim his lost EXP, much to the hamster's utter boredom. Suddenly, a system alert popped up, reminding him of a massive, lingering headache. Siegfried had to visit his new kingdom to be crowned as their first sovereign. Trudging through the forest toward the Protein region, they neared the Proa kingdom. Ham Heem scoffed. The place was a total dump, no gates, nothing. Tae Sung Han's frustration reached its boiling point. Why was he babysitting this backwater village instead of grinding levels? He ranted furiously until even the hamster told him to pipe down. The debuff master insisted he had every right to be salty after losing so much time. Ham Heem tried playing peacemaker, suggesting that kingship might come with epic hidden rewards. The adventurer wasn't buying it. He had zero interest in wearing a heavy, burdensome crown. Good governance offered no guarantees. He kept grumbling about how tedious royal duties were. He only cared about the loot. Seeing the quest window, he charged toward Proa in a rage. He swiped the screen away. Deep down, Tae Sung Han sensed a major red flag. Why would an emperor hand a whole kingdom to a random adventurer? It smelled fishy. The pet felt a chill as his master glared at him. Ham Heem took immediate offense. The hero called him fat. The hamster insisted he was shredded despite only being seen eating. He huffed that he was more than capable of walking his own path. Even as the pet clung to his comfy perch, a piercing shriek shattered the silence. The forest spirit instantly knew that a beautiful soul was in dire straits nearby. Urging its master to investigate the chaos, our hero frowned, sensing a dark omen at the very gates of his new territory. Nearby, a thug sneered that the girl should have just stayed quiet while his partner calculated her worth at 1,000 gold coins. The terrified elf girl begged for mercy, her ears trembling. But the scum laughed, refusing to damage such a premium product. As the young elf began to sob, they seized her by the hair, dragging her into the darkness. Just as the villain enjoyed her pain, Siegfried moved in a flash, summoning a massive golem fist to launch the aggressor into orbit. Poof! The player known as Darmandong Iron Axe was instantly deleted. His comrade stood frozen, watching his ally crumble. From a single overwhelming blow, desperately fumbling with his magic to mount a defense. Before the goon could even bark about who they were, Siegfried shut him down, calling them absolute trash, who mistook this game for a playground. They were clearly begging for a world-class beatdown, terrified by this raw power. The survivor stammered, asking for Siegfried's name and guild, but before the king could speak, Hammond boasted that his master was the absolute lord of this land, a flex that actually made our hero smirk. The elven girl gasped in shock. Suddenly, the thug's eyes widened as he recognized the protagonist. As the legendary slayer of survivors, right before a heavy helmet collided with his skull. The hero noted his enemy was way too slow before punching his lights out, finishing the job with an annoyed sigh. With the trash cleared, the newly crowned king checked on the elf, who confirmed she was unhurt, while the hamster puffed out its chest, acting like they had just saved the entire world. However, Siegfried reminded the furball that he did all the heavy lifting, though the pet insisted it was the one protecting the beautiful Natasha. The elf introduced herself as a resident of the woods and timidly asked for her savior's name. Stepping into his regal role, the new king introduced himself and his familiar. Hearing his legendary title, Natasha realized he was the real deal. When he claimed the throne, even if it felt a bit cringe for him, he was soon left speechless. When the elf revealed that no human had sat on this throne for over 200 years, Natasha shared the dark history of Proatine, where humans constantly hunted her people and kidnapped her family. Hearing her tragic story, the hero felt a pang of pity in his heart. So, he vowed to escort her home. When she tried to decline, he insisted, wanting to learn the secrets of his realm. The king needed to understand his new kingdom. Soon the girl thanked her protector for the long journey, claiming she could handle the rest alone. Even when he offered to go further, she politely insisted she was fine. With her village in sight, she suddenly asked for his hand, leaving our hero utterly confused. She pressed a precious heirloom into his palm, a treasure passed down to Natasha from her late mother. It was a unique rank floral ring of maternal love that would vanish after, instantly restoring the wearer's health to the max. Our hero tried to give it back immediately, arguing that since he is a player, he can just respawn if things go south. But Natasha shook her head, explaining that for non-player characters, death is permanent, and this was a mother's gift. She told him her mother's dying wish was to always repay kindness. Since he had saved her life, she insisted he keep the token. With a final bow, Natasha disappeared into the trees, wishing the king glory for coming to save Proa. And just like that, they parted ways. Han Tai-sun felt a weird vibe from the loot. First a ring from a golem maker saving his mom, and now this. He was currently rocking 2 rings with insanely long names, both themed around motherly love. The hamster then asked about their next move, so Siegfried summarized the elf's warnings. This kingdom was a total nightmare, crawling with monsters, deadly dungeons, alpha hunters, and savage barbarians to the northwest. The pet then dropped a bombshell about an empire lord who demanded human sacrifices. Once he realized the empire, Siegfried saw through their scheme. This kingship wasn't a prize, it was a trap to dump their disasters onto him. Finally, it clicked why no human dared to rule this cursed domain for 200 years. As his pet whined about the danger, Siegfried gripped the elf's priceless treasure, fueling his resolve. If he conquered these trials, the ultimate jackpot awaited. His hamster sidekick gave a tiny, supportive nod. Decision made. Siegfried was going to become the greatest sovereign this world had ever witnessed. That fire pleased the forest spirit. Soon he stood before the massive iron gates of Kuzan Castle. Deep within his new realm, a gatekeeper yawned, complaining about how painfully dull his shift was. He begged his partner for gossip, but the other soldier just shrugged. They were both stuck in boredom. They were about to snooze when a lone figure appeared on the horizon, breaking the silence. It was Siegfried, feeling totally out of place. Instantly, the guards unsheathed their blades with a snap. They demanded his name, but our hero just offered a polite, awkward thanks for their hard work. Then he dropped the bombshell. He was their new king. The guards stood there, completely dumbfounded. He repeated himself clearly, introducing his royal title as the one and only Siegfried von Proa. Silence fell, followed by an explosion of mockery. They couldn't believe this king looked so pathetic. They labeled him a lunatic for his ragged clothes, but little Hum Hum jumped in to protest. The pet insisted he was royalty despite looking like a literal street beggar. Thanks for the support, buddy. The guards jeered, calling the hamster a chubby rodent who was trying way too hard to be cute. Standing firm, Siegfried explained he'd won a massive tournament where the grand prize was this very crown. He pulled out the emperor's official decree, but a cold blade suddenly pierced right through the parchment. A guard snagged the letter with his spear tip just to mock him, but their faces paled upon reading. The seal was genuine, yet instead of bowing, the guard ripped the imperial document into tiny shreds. He smirked, claiming it was all a joke before warning Siegfried that deceiving them was a fatal error. Their hatred for the emperor ran deeper than anything. He was the most loathed man in the kingdom. Because of that, they aimed their jagged spears at Siegfried's throat, their eyes full of murderous intent. They'd heard a new king was coming, but they vowed never to serve a puppet of the empire. Sensing the bloodlust, the hamster leaped off Siegfried's shoulder to find cover. Things were about to get ugly. Negotiating was over. Siegfried unleashed a chilling command, demanding to see their superiors immediately, or face the consequences. The guards snapped, charging at the young king with their weapons raised to drive the intruder out. With a fluid motion, Siegfried evaded the strike and landed a devastating counterpunch on the first guard. As the second lunged, our hero snatched a fallen spear and ignited his legendary lightning spear technique. The explosive power obliterated the iron gate instantly. The remaining guards stood frozen in absolute terror and disbelief. Siegfried sighed, noting he hated hurting his own people, but they had forced his hand by attacking first. Now, it was time for a lesson. The new king began his march to bring order to this lawless land. Pandemonium erupted within the fortress, as squads of guards swarmed in to neutralize the powerful intruder. But Siegfried was a debuff master, crippling every soldier who dared to step within his strike zone. He mocked their pathetic strength, declaring that such incompetence was the real disease rotting this entire nation. High above, a red-haired man watched in horror, convinced this adventurer was out for blood and revenge. Warren's panicked lieutenant warned that if they didn't act fast, this monster would slaughter every single soldier. Realizing the threat, the red-haired commander roared an order to eliminate the protagonist at any cost. "Kill him now," he screamed. Every guard in the vicinity surged forward in a desperate final wave. Seeing their newfound spirit, Siegfried prepared a massive debuff spell to wipe the entire field in one go. Out of nowhere, a knight blurred across the battlefield, unleashing a strike so fierce it split the crowd. Tae Sung Han recoiled. That blow could have ended him. He realized this furious woman must be their captain. Meet Oscar, a terrifying level 101 NPC with enough power to reshape the battlefield. She served as the deputy commander-in-chief, leading both the 1st Mountain and 2nd Artillery battalions. Oscar declared the trespasser would pay for his crimes, ordering him to brace for the inevitable. Tae Sung Han sensed this warrior was on a different level, igniting a spark of genuine interest. He weighed his options, stealth or a showdown, until his hamster sidekick suddenly broke the silence. The little fluffball shrieked, "You've got zero right to judge when your guys attacked first." The lady stared in disbelief, but Rowan hissed a warning that these intruders were dangerous. After all, they'd just pulverized the gate and mowed down an entire squad of soldiers. Being labeled an outsider flipped a switch in the hero. Maybe he should eliminate this guy first. Tae Sung Han dropped a bombshell. The emperor himself had crowned him king of these lands. But the gatekeepers just mocked him, leaving him no choice but to act in self-defense. The pet nodded, but Lady Oscar remained skeptical, demanding to see an official imperial decree. The hero coldly revealed that her own guards had already shredded the sovereign document. The culprit trembled in fear, while the lady decided to verify the hero's outrageous claims. She prepared a communication spell to reach her colleague, but issued a chilling ultimatum. One lie meant a death sentence, yet the unfazed king accepted the high-stakes deal. Deep within the fortress, a voice demanded to know what caused all the chaotic noise. A servant stammered that a man claiming to be the new king was thrashing the guards. The portly noble wasn't surprised. The capital had warned him of this arrival weeks ago. To the count, this entire commotion was just a pointless annoyance, not worth his time. The servant insisted it mattered, but the aristocrat already planned to manipulate the new ruler. He intended to play nice just long enough to banish him or make him disappear. That the king was a player disgusted the noble, who then threatened his servant Batista. Terrified, Batista swore his soul belonged only to his master, not the new arrival. Wheezing up the stairs, the bloated aristocrat made one thing crystal clear to his subordinate. This realm didn't need a sovereign because its true ruler was Count Beerbohm, Lord of Proa. With a sinister grin, the count ordered the hunters to assemble. He had a new target. Moments later, the atmosphere shifted as Lady Oscar and the guards dropped to their knees. Rowan begged for his life, pleading for the new king to overlook his absolute stupidity. Oscar offered her head in penance, while the hero sighed that they should have just listened. The hamster wasn't feeling merciful, calling them fake for bowing only when they faced death. Tae Sung Han noticed his pet was getting savage, yet he chose to forgive the guards. Rowan wept with gratitude, but the king's mercy came with a very specific price tag. The two mockers were ordered to perform a naked dance in public to apologize for their insolence. The hamster upped the ante, demanding that Rowan join the birthday suit parade right in the middle. Leaving Rowan soul-crushed, the hero finally marched into the castle, led by the shell-shocked commander. His Majesty cut straight to the chase, asking who was actually running this domain. Lady Oscar identified the man in charge as the current regional lord Count Beerbohm. She offered to lead the hero to the count's chambers, but the king found it suspicious. Why did the count hide during the battle? The motivation for his hate became obvious. He'd been the unofficial king for years, and now a real one had snatched his crown. Oscar paused to speak, but before she could, the tubby noble waddled onto the scene. With a fake smile, he boomed that the kingdom's rightful protector had finally arrived. As the noble showered him with hollow praise, the hero asked Oscar if they kept beasts indoors. The insult landed perfectly, and the count turned purple as he realized he was the monster. After a tense introduction, the count mentioned how he'd already disciplined his rude soldiers, but the debuff master just brushed it off, knowing exactly what snake he was dealing with. With the confusion finally cleared, the pet couldn't help but wonder who this mysterious man actually was. Mistaking him for a literal swine, our hero told him to chill out and not worry about it. The stout noble showered his new liege with praise before extending a formal invitation to an epic banquet. As the pet begged the pig for snacks, Bourbon set the record straight while they strolled off into the distance. Anxiety gripped the deputy's face. Later that night, the hamster sighed, noting just how long it had been. Rubbing his full stomach, our protagonist marveled at the Count's surprisingly generous hospitality. Settling into a plush temporary suite, Ham Ham urged his master to finally get some well-deserved rest. But relaxation had to wait. He needed to dive into that urgent kingdom status report immediately. Scanning the scrolls, the grim reality of his new territory hit him hard. This place was a total disaster. From barren lands to crumbling roads and a tiny suffering population, the kingdom was basically on life support. With Lady Oscar as his only real asset, it was clear that Proa was rotting from the inside. Now he understood the deep-seated hatred for the Emperor, who had simply turned a blind eye to their misery. He knew everything, yet did nothing. Luckily, our hero still held the powerful Proa Protection Act. This granted a 3-year immunity against aggressive guilds like Genesis, but he knew the clock was ticking. Massive reforms were needed. He considered a quick dungeon crawl to start, but then something felt off. Instinct flared as he triggered Quick Draw, hurling his blade toward a shadow looming on the balcony. The pet panicked, thinking an assassin had arrived, but the intruder was actually the legendary Lady Oscar herself. The king stood frozen, completely caught off guard by the female knight's sudden and stealthy rooftop appearance. The hamster, narcissistically, thought she was there for him, while the hero demanded to know her true business. She dropped to one knee, begging forgiveness for the intrusion, while claiming a matter of life and death. It was a classified situation, but then he noticed something alarming: fresh blood dripping from her hand. The spirit shouted for immediate treatment, fearing a nasty infection would set in if they delayed. Activating Infinity Bundle, he summoned medical supplies instantly, earning a soft thank you from the stunned knight. The pet boasted that he could provide an endless supply of heals. Meanwhile, Tae-sung Han stepped closer. He worried about her pain levels, but she stoically dismissed it, claiming such injuries were routine for knights. Even so, she winced. The hero reminded her that even the strongest legends feel the sting of reality. Gently applying a bandage, he shifted the focus back to her mysterious late-night visit. After a tense silence, Oscar looked Siegfried dead in the eye and asked if his kingship was legit. She was skeptical. Ruling this forsaken land required an iron will that most men simply did not possess. It is why Proa had been kingless for 2 centuries. She advised him to drop the crown if he was faking. If he was not 100% committed, he should walk away. The hero let out an awkward laugh. He cut through the heavy atmosphere by asking why on earth she was currently cradling his hamster. The pet bragged she had succumbed to his adorable charms, but Oscar quickly brought back the dark reality. She insisted he understand the gravity of their plight. Our legendary debuff master simply nodded. He acknowledged her valid fears, offering a calm reassurance that settled the heavy air between them. He vowed to pour his blood and sweat into this kingdom, formally swearing his life to its revival. Searching for a glimmer of truth, she asked if she could truly trust him. He did not blink once. She pressed him again, and then a third time, desperate to know if his words were real or hollow. Finally, losing his cool, he snapped that her nagging was getting old. The pet joked that his face looked sus. Apparently, he did not look like a hero. Dropping the formalities, she decided it was time for the cold truth. He had finally broken through her walls. She leaned in, whispering a dire warning about the land's current lord. Siegfried already hated the guy, but wondered why his own knight was suddenly snitching on her boss. Her eyes turned cold. She declared her blade belonged to the kingdom and its people, not a puppet master. The Count was a parasite. She exposed how that gluttonous noble bled the commoners dry with zero remorse. Between the crushing taxes and his twisted manipulation of unsuspecting adventurers, the Count was truly a monster. To enslave the elves, this trash count rose through the ranks as a bottom-tier corrupt government official. His crimes eventually outweighed his merit, getting him kicked out and dumped as the lord of this backwater territory. Desperate for clout, he struck a dark deal with ruthless elf hunters to cement his iron grip. The deal was simple: slaughter every elf on sight, and the Count would ignore their heinous crimes. Recently, he even funneled tax gold into their pockets, masking the bribe as public security costs. This bloated noble went as far as offering 10 innocent citizens as sacrifices to the local vampire lord. He called it a peace offering, but the hero quickly saw that this ruler was rotten to the core. Seething with rage at such pure malice, the hero's fury left Oscar absolutely speechless and trembling. Determined to rip out the rot at its source, the hero swore to execute the Count and end his reign. However, the lady warned that despite his filth, the Count actually maintained a decent facade with the public. Eliminating him now would spark major backlash from both the court and the commoners. The hero scoffed, asking if a monster who feeds his people to vampires is truly essential for stability. She urged caution, but the hero saw right through her. She just wanted him to play it safe. He shrugged it off, claiming he usually smashes first and asks questions later to heal the nation. With a promise to keep the king turned his back and set out on a path of retribution. To the knight's horror, the hero declared it was time to hunt a traitor. Meanwhile, the Count feasted. The Elf Hunters Guild was playing hardball, demanding an extra 5,000 gold for their dirty work. This tilted the Count, who whined that these thugs were taking advantage of his so-called generosity. But the hunters fired back. Taking down a king wasn't in the original contract. It was a premium job. 5,000 was a steal for regicide. Cornered, the greaseball noble had no choice but to pay up. Just as the deal was sealed, a thunderous boom shook the room, freezing everyone in their tracks. A panicked count barked at Batista for answers, just as the heavy doors began to buckle and splinter. Terror gripped the noble as a voice from the hall casually complimented the door's impressive durability. With one final blast, the hero shattered the entrance and mocked the lord for feasting, while others suffered. The count froze at the sight of his king. Han Tae-sung noted how loyal the servants were. He laughed about the guards' desperate excuses to block the door, calling his futile efforts truly touching. It was peak irony catching the man red-handed, while he was literally bargaining for the hero's life. The count stammered about a misunderstanding, but the hero's tone turned ice-cold as he cornered the traitor. Tossing the servant aside like garbage, the hero stepped forward to have a little chat with the noble. The count's desperate attempts to explain himself only made the hero smirk. This was going to be fun. Trapped with the hunters, the count tried to play it off, claiming they were all just close friends. The hunter cut the act instantly, mocking the count for being terrified of a mere brat. Seeing the hero as a joke fueled his rage. He snapped at the hunter to shut his mouth. The criminal lunged forward only to have his face meet the devastating force of a golem's fist. The henchmen watched in shock as their leader crumbled. Coldly, the king ordered the traitor to step forward. He demanded immediate obedience, but the trembling coward squealed that they were already close enough. He was terrified to bridge the gap between them, desperately trying to keep some distance from the king. Fed up, the king lunged across the room, grabbing the noble and slamming his head into the floor. The monarch declared a formal execution for his crimes against the people and his unholy pact with vampires. Even pinned down, the noble cackled, mocking the king as an idealistic brat who understood nothing. He barked that his sins were necessary sacrifices for peace, laughing at the king's naive sense of justice. To him, the hero was just a clueless newcomer who couldn't grasp the harsh reality of this world. In a final act of defiance, the fat noble grabbed a plate and smashed it over the ruler's head. Blood trickled down the king's face as he echoed the count's pathetic excuse of peace through sin. With eyes ablaze, he vowed to build a kingdom that prospers through strength, not through human sacrifices. "Savor your final moments and watch my power from the abyss," he sneered before obliterating the noble's skull like glass. Lady Oscar arrived just in time to witness the carnage, paralyzed as the king actually deleted the corrupt count. His pet stepped in to calm her. Despite the king's hot-headed reputation, there was always a hidden master plan. Still, even the pet seemed to doubt his own words. Ham doubled down, swearing that our protagonist is a man of his word who never misses. That claim only made him look more sus to the lady. Brushing off her hesitation, she realized something far more important. She had to prove her absolute loyalty to this new ruler who had executed a count just to defend her. As she pondered her duty, a spear whistled through the air. Oscar reacted instantly, shattering the projectile with a high-speed roundhouse kick. The knight apologized for her late arrival, but her face turned beet red when the master praised her god-tier combat skills. She admitted to forgetting her blade, so the hero handed her his own massive greatsword, trusting her to tame the heavy steel. The hero gave her a heads up. Things were about to get wild. Oscar read the room and prepared for the chaos ahead. Siegfried decided to prioritize hunting the hunters, as he couldn't stand such filthy bottom feeders lurking in his sanctuary. The lady gripped the colossal sword with newfound resolve, ready to carry out her king's lethal commands. The order was final: execute every single intruder. Oscar channeled her mana, feeling the raw energy surge through her body. She finally snapped, unleashing a terrifying storm of steel that rained down endless slashes on her targets. At a blistering speed, the hunters were caught in a blender of blades, their blood painting the room in a scarlet mist. Stunned by her agility with such a heavy weapon, the hero realized he needed her elite skills to finish the job. Her mastery was clearly superior to his own. Suddenly his instincts flared. He shouted a warning as a threat lunged at her back. A colossal stone monster swung a crushing fist. Oscar barely parried the mountain-moving blow using the hero's greatsword. This creature possessed insane destructive power. The summoner laughed, taunting them that his boss Cheng Yong would be absolutely livid. The boss wouldn't take the death of his men lightly. Now, Mashon, the level 85 powerhouse and third strongest guild member, stepped out. He intended to end the king and his knight right there. Oscar sensed his mana. It was vastly superior to the previous trash. She begged to handle this monster herself, but our hero was already locked in. He was going to take this head on. Oscar tried to stop him, but the king's word was law. The level 85 summoner mocked the lowly level 50 standing before him. Mashon called him a weakling, but the hero just smirked, pointing out he'd already made the high-level elite bleed from the nose. Fuming with rage, the summoner promised to return that pain tenfold, vowing to make the hero regret ever being born. He commanded his beast 4 arms to crush the protagonist. As the golem charged like a freight train, the ground trembled. Our hero simply raised a hand and popped his skill, Supreme Contempt, which massive buffs his damage against high-level opponents. Utilizing the 35-level gap to his advantage, he prepared to turn the monster's own strength against it. With one devastating punch, he completely pulverized the beast. The summoner stood frozen as his ultimate weapon crumbled into dust. A single hit from a level 50 beginner impossible. Siegfried stared him down looking like a true god of war. "You're next," he cold-bloodedly promised. Soon, blood-curdling screams echoed throughout the castle as the hero began his work. The locals were different from players. They didn't have the rune of transcendence to see status windows or levels. They relied on sensing raw mana signatures instead, which is exactly why the lady looked like she'd seen a ghost. Oscar couldn't process reality. Her king had just one-shot an adventurer who was supposed to be leagues above him. She began to wonder if her own senses were broken. No human should be capable of such an impossible feat. The protagonist's power was so overwhelming it defied all logic. Caught off guard, she blushed as her liege approached her. He leaned in to check on her well-being. She claimed to be fine, but the king wasn't buying her tough act for a second. Flustered, she demanded to know what was wrong. He pointed to her hand where a wound had reopened during the intense clash. The golem's impact had been more brutal than she let on. Embarrassed, the knight barked at the hamster for medical supplies. The pet actually roasted the master for failing to protect his lady, leaving the hero completely speechless at the sass. Oscar insisted it was her job to take the hits, though she felt a sting of guilt for making the king worry. As she scanned the perimeter for more enemies, the hero dropped a bombshell mission on her that left her reeling. He ordered her to round up every council member for an emergency meeting. He was ready to flip the script. There was no going back now. Later, as the throne room filled, the air was thick with the confused whispers of officials. They couldn't believe they were being summoned for a midnight conference when the new king hadn't even been there a day. A bystander scoffed, claiming the hero's royal joy was just a front to flex his absolute dominance. Despite him being a rookie adventurer, his allies whispered they had no choice but to follow his lead. He scanned the room for the missing count, but suddenly, the heavy doors swung open as the sovereign arrived. Gasps filled the hall. The young king was battered and drenched in crimson. The crowd began to murmur in shock. Anxious whispers spread, praying he wouldn't become a tyrant. In that moment, the hero recalled a crucial lesson. His master once taught him the secret to identifying true monsters, just by their sheer presence and posture. A real predator walks with steel shoulders, a core of iron blazing eyes, and a terrifyingly calm expression. "Move with absolute conviction," the old man had said. Suddenly, a familiar system alert flickered into existence. A monarch-exclusive quest appeared: sit on the throne. The objective: simply claim his rightful place upon the royal seat. This trial would enchant his royal title with a unique skill. He realized his destiny as a ruler was calling. He was the king of Praman, a legendary rank that until now had been nothing but a hollow name. He figured the title was just for show, but secretly hoped for a power-up that didn't totally suck. As he settled onto the gold seat, the quest cleared, and a massive wave of Force of the Lord erupted. His crown hummed with authority, granting domain-exclusive buffs that supercharged his experience gain and farming efficiency. He instantly gained 10 levels, plus a massive bonus based on his rank. The hero stood there absolutely floored. He'd just hit the leveling jackpot without lifting a finger, but then the system warned him of a power overflow. Too much mana could be fatal, but he shrugged it off, praying this crown wasn't a heavy burden. Heavy as the head right, suddenly, agonizing pain ripped through his veins as his stats skyrocketed toward the ceiling. While his levels surged, Tae Sung-han cursed those greedy game developers for making this process so damn painful. He endured the torture. Compared to his hellish training at the Lake of Purification, this was a breeze. He'd survived worse. With a final surge of energy, our main character finally smashed through the level 60 ceiling. The crowd stood frozen in awe, while his pet just watched the spectacle with pure admiration. Siegfried rose, radiating divine power. He felt so ridiculously strong, he thought his physical body might actually explode. Raw energy pulsed under his skin. He unlocked a legendary skill, but before he could even test it, the force of the Lord flared again. Every noble in the room was left trembling before his overwhelming aura. They were stunned. They thought this mythical power was just a fairy tale. Even Tae Sung-han was shocked. He never imagined his new ability would be this overpowered. Confused, Ham turned to the lady for some answers. She explained it was an ancient enchantment meant to empower those brave enough to rule over broken lands. The land itself had recognized him. The kingdom finally accepted the hero as its one true legitimate sovereign. Oscar's praise made him blush, while his loyal buddy immediately started planning a massive victory celebration party. Time to party. Meanwhile, the royal scribe watched from the shadows, his eyes wide with disbelief. Praman finally had a real king. He gripped his pen, ready to record this legendary moment for eternity. The blonde scribe began composing an epic poem about Siegfried, the hero chosen by the Lord's divine force. Divine right, baby. Later, once the hero finally found some decent clothes, he addressed his new subjects. He greeted the council warmly, officially introducing himself as the man who would lead them all. He explained his sudden ascension to the throne and apologized for calling an emergency meeting so late. The council quickly bowed, swearing their total loyalty. No apologies needed, they were ready to serve their new king. Seeing their devotion, he realized his new skill gave him insane charisma. It was time for business. His first royal decree, a death sentence for the former lord. The entire room went dead silent. Total shock. He exposed the count's dirty secrets, shadow deals with thugs, and betraying the people for profit. The count sacrificed innocents to vampires while preaching justice. "I don't negotiate with monsters," the king declared. "Order built on suffering is no order at all." One noble stammered that the punishment was way too harsh. Maybe so, but the king wasn't budging. He'd rather deal death than let criminals run wild in Praman. He issued a final warning: nobody would stop him from rebuilding this kingdom and restoring absolute order. That was the king's word. Finally, he turned to the female knight, naming her his new supreme commander. She agreed instantly. He immediately ordered his commander to mobilize the entire vanguard, preparing for an all-out assault on a stronghold just 3 hours from the palace. To purge the rot, they marched on the Elf Hunter Mountain Fortress, where captives wept. The count's death triggered a cold fury. Reports confirmed their elite squads were completely decimated, leaving the boss certain of one thing: only Oscar could be responsible for this. Level 100. Master Zhang Rong realized the knight had sworn fealty to the new king, sealing the count's fate. Desperate for profit, his subordinate begged for a new plan of attack. He ordered them to liquidate the slaves and recruit every hitman to invade the kingdom. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the mountain. The guildmaster rushed out, stunned to find the Proa army already laying waste to his fortress. The soldiers tore through hunters like a whirlwind, while the king watched from afar, knowing the ambush worked. Most players were offline, leaving them totally vulnerable to the slaughter. Impressed by their lethality, the lady explained how the brutal barren lands forged them into barbarian-slaying machines. Oscar boasted their strength eclipsed all others, though the hero remained skeptical, recalling how easily he'd personally crushed them in the past. Desperate, the hunters rallied to strike back while they still had the numbers. Seeing high-tier equipment, the players grew greedy, eager to farm the NPCs for rare loot. The hero joked the commander had jinxed them, and she finally had to admit they were outclassed in gear and skill. Drawing her blade, she prepared to join the fray. But the hero stopped her, choosing to handle this mess personally. Oscar was paralyzed with shock, fearing a Pyrrhic victory with heavy losses. The protagonist then revealed his ultimate move. He would rig the battlefield using Zone of Mortality and Zone of Reality, shattering enemy defenses and draining their mana instantly. The players froze in sheer horror, their strength evaporating. Now a single mistake meant instant death against the charging army. Terrified by the massive debuff field, the hunters screamed for an immediate retreat. The king sighed in disappointment. If only they were monsters, the XP would be legendary. Oscar, bewildered, questioned the nature of his divine skill. He claimed it was a secret teaching from his master to strip an enemy of their will to fight. Now his forces could dominate the battlefield without losing a single man. Oscar stood in awe of his tactical genius, finally understanding why he'd held her back. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as Zhang Rong himself crashed onto the field with a roar. Swinging a massive axe, he sent soldiers flying like ragdolls, his monstrous power chilling everyone. He snatched 2 terrified guards, brutally slamming their skulls into the dirt with sickening force. The hunters cheered as Mungo and Zhang Rong entered, certain their victory was now inevitable. The thug leader bellowed for the king of Proa to drop the debuffs and face him. Identifying the red-haired beast as the guildmaster, the commander begged to strike him down. But the king refused. His eyes gleamed with the hunger for a real challenge. The knight tried to act as his shield, but he silenced her with a look, declaring he had a duty. A true king must always protect those who follow him. He tossed his cloak to her, wanting it kept clean for his certain victory. Ignoring her protests, he summoned his weapon and prepared to descend into the carnage. "Stay alive for me," he commanded, dropping like a god of war into the slaughter, refusing to let his people die, while Oscar trembled, the hunter leader, cursed, thinking the king had fled. But then a panicked subordinate pointed to the sky. Something was coming, and the guildmaster's blood ran cold. Realizing it wasn't the knight commander, the king summoned his lightning spear, sending a lethal surge bouncing through the hunters like a pinball. He was aiming straight for the big boss. The lackeys screamed a warning, but the hunter leader just scoffed, claiming he had nothing to fear. He parried the heavy blow with his massive axe. Sensing an opening, the protagonist snatched it, infusing the air with divine power for a devastating strike. Once again, the criminal's heavy steel blocked the path. The king gave him props for his resilience, but the bandit boss was already losing his grip. The electrical surge fried his nerves, turning his limbs to jelly. He was smashed into the dirt, leaving his subordinates paralyzed with pure horror. The hero remembered the guildmaster's challenge to prove who was the true alpha. The sudden realization sent a cold shiver down the hunter's spine. With a voice that commanded the heavens, our hero promised a legendary beatdown. Every soul present was glued to this epic clash of titans. "Stand back," the king ordered his troops, "this one's mine." This triggered the guildmaster's right-hand man, who lunged at our hero in a blind rage. He sought vengeance for his fallen leader, but his magic-infused fist was stopped dead in its tracks by the commander-in-chief herself. Coldly, the girl declared that a mere hunter wasn't worthy of addressing her king. She would be the one to bury him. Facing the legendary commander, the man's soul withered. The protagonist simply nodded to the lady, leaving the hunter in her capable hands. He turned his gaze to his real opponent, mocking him for napping on the job after being given way too much time to recover. He'd granted that breather for a fair fight. Shamed and desperate, the guildmaster gritted his teeth, demanding to know where this insane strength came from. He realized this rookie didn't just survive on luck, his power was terrifyingly real. Our hero just found the whole realization pretty ironic. One single strike had nearly ended the guildmaster's life. The man then began rambling about the rumors of BJ Raptor's supposed defeat. Word was, he'd been taken down by someone using nerfing skills, the exact same technique the hero had just unleashed on him. The protagonist played dumb, prompting the man to blow his top. He unleashed his hidden mana, screaming that the hero just got a lucky shot. "You caught me off guard," he roared. Desperate to flip the script, the guildmaster finally activated his ultimate buff, going berserk. He vowed to stop playing around. Our hero just smirked, genuinely amused that his prey was relying on a basic physical enhancement skill. It was a desperate move to overwrite his debuffs. Now both leaders stood toe-to-toe, ready for the final bloody showdown. The axe wielder lunged at the shield bearer, but the protagonist's defense was an iron wall. He instantly imbued his blade with holy divine power. A brutal uppercut slammed into the guildmaster's jaw. The man spat blood, recognizing that same annoying skill from their previous encounter. He bragged it was useless now. His berserker form supposedly granted him total immunity to all elemental and attribute-based attacks. He swung his axe with mountain-splitting force, but Siegfried danced away. The king finally saw the true depth of the man's arrogance. Realizing his foe felt invincible behind that immunity, the protagonist began calculating. He needed a raw, non-attribute debuff to break this guy's ego. Supreme Contempt was still ticking in the background. With a cold glint in his eye, he decided to test a new power. As the hunter tried a cowardly backstab, he fumed with rage. Why did his opponent look so bored while facing his strongest moves? He cranked the intensity, shrouding his axe in bloody hack slash. He dared the hero to stand still and tank the incoming carnage. This was his strongest technique, a wicked skill that grew more lethal with every drop of blood the hero spilled on the battlefield. A barrage of strikes followed, finally shattering the hero's shield and blowing him back. Nearby, the knight was locked in her own struggle. Seeing her king fly back, she lost her focus for a split second. She barely managed to parry a heavy blow from her opponent. The hunter gloated that their leader would be the one standing over the king's corpse, leaving the commander's heart racing with worry. Sparks flew as the guildmaster dragged his heavy axe toward the fallen youth. He decided it was time for a little education. To him, the protagonist was just a green kid. He spat that the boy's entire kingdom was nothing but a cursed sinking ship. Surrounded by traitors, barbarians, and bloodthirsty vampires, the man claimed the hero was basically walking into a death trap he couldn't escape. Even with the Emperor's backing, he sneered that a brat like him couldn't handle the crushing weight of those problems. The hunter boss demanded the protagonist hand over his territory immediately. This was a job for a real man, not some child. He burst into a mocking laugh, claiming he'd let the hero live as a beggar in the city under his gracious mercy. Yet the protagonist remained unimpressed. The king simply looked him in the eye and told the hunter his big mouth was getting annoying. A new weapon shimmered into existence. Now, with a spear in hand, he admitted he knew exactly how messed up his domain was. He wasn't blind to the chaos. He knew the problems were stacking up, which was exactly why a real ruler had to step in. He knew someone had to shoulder the burden and clean house. He was ready to be that man. The guildmaster scoffed, claiming he'd only been taking it easy on his opponent until this very moment. But the protagonist just lowered his spear, his eyes glowing with a cold, predatory intensity for the next exchange. He was determined to protect his land and show this thug the true, overwhelming power of a real ruler. He sneered at the kid's youth, but his venomous threats couldn't even make our hero flinch. Screaming with murderous intent, he lunged to kill, only to freeze as his skills refused to activate. Suddenly, a heavy boot slammed into his face, sending him tumbling back before he could even recover. Panic gripped him as he realized his powers were dead. Was this some kind of game-breaking glitch? He had more than enough mana, yet there it was, a glowing magic circle trapping him in place. Our hero watched the terror dawn on the man's face, satisfied that his new ability was overkill. The criminal's rage flared. He was being shut down by the debuff master's newest skill, Wave of Oppression. Using pure electromagnetic interference, it silenced his abilities. Driven to madness, the oaf man charged blindly. He shrieked Hacker, a title the king wore like a badge of honor before dropping some truth. With a spear leveled at the man's throat, Tai Sun Han demanded blood for the enslaved elves. The king promised there'd be no escape. Even then, the pathetic guildmaster continued to spit insults. He claimed he could win without skills, but his heart nearly stopped as the spear locked onto him. Art of Shakiro. With a blinding burst, the first form lightning flash ended the guildmaster's life. A battle-worn Tai Sun Han looked down annoyed that this piece of trash wouldn't stop his yapping. Even while staring death right in the face,